All right, y'all. Welcome to All Politics are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. Y'all know if it's Friday, y'all know it's time for All Politics are Local. But more importantly, y'all know if it is the fourth Friday, y'all know it's time, of course, for the disciples. So we're going to get this show started tonight. We've got a number of things that are going to take place tonight. Of course, we got the disciples coming up first, and then, of course, coming up after them, we're going to talk to TJ Whitaker and Chris Duran. We're going to talk with them tonight about some of the issues they're having with some of the attacks that are coming on them as they stand up and voice their solidarity to what's happening around the folks in Gaza, particularly what's going on in Israel. So they're going to talk a little bit about that. And then, of course, we've got a number of other folks that are going to come through from the ACLU. We're going to talk with them tonight. And then, of course, DJ Rhino is going to talk about the state of hip hop. So we're going to talk about that. And Zaid, did I get that right for the 7:45?
Actually, we've got a cancellation.
Oh,
Our
okay.
scheduled guest has a child care challenge at the last minute, so she's not going to be able to join us.
Okay. Okay.
What's up,
All right.
Baba?
Hey, y'all.
No.
Well, then, of course, what we'll do is we'll turn it over to the disciples. Of course, we'll let them introduce themselves and then talk about, of course, their partner. Who, of course, is not going to be with them tonight. His schedule has got him kind of tied up. So I'll turn it over to you all, and we'll get in when we fit in.
Well, grace and peace be unto you from God, our Lord Jesus Christ. And I'm here with Reverend Roundtree. And we also give our kudos and much respect to our other partner, Abdul Haqq Muhammad, Minister Abdul Haqq Muhammad. And we're just glad to be here. Good to be alive. Good to be alive and kicking in spite of what's going on in the world. Now, I know my colleague had to get off in a half hour, so I want to hear from her. So, Reverend Roundtree, Councilwoman Roundtree, come on, let me hear from you, girlfriend.
You want to hear from me?
You
My
know I do.
beloved.
I ain't heard from you in some days.
Let me tell you something. I'm trying to get to my car. I'm in City Hall. I'm survivors panel. Not that I'm a survivor, but I know a lot of survivors.
And that's breast cancer survivor, I take it.
It's breast cancer survivor,
Listen, your
right?
wife,
You got one. That's
first
right.
lady of this generation, got a
That's right.
serious testimony.
Yeah,
That's
she
That's
right.
has
my girl.
What
she
about
has a
that?
But
walk
anyway, good
tomorrow.
evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to the Disciples, where we are now featured on the number one hip hop radio. Yes, one in the front, one in the back. I'm also loading up my truck with stuff that I have to present. But all politics are local. And we thank Ed Riley, my brother, Pastor in the Hood Ali, in his absence, Minister Abdul Haqq Muhammad, and all those of you who have tuned in to the disciples. I'm excited and I thank you for this platform. Of course, I'm representing North Kids Faith Alliance. Of course, as councilwoman, I'm a woman of God first. So I'm Revolutionary Baba Roundtree on the line. Go ahead, Pastor Big
All
Brother.
right. All right, baby. You done got converted. You done got elevated. Revolutionary Baba Roundtree. But I think it's a good thing with the
No,
cancer
they
thing
gave me that
going on.
name. But when did I get that name?
My wife is a survivor, and she's having a
Yes,
walk
she is.
tomorrow from our church at
Yes, she is.
Branchwood Park at 10 o'clock a.m.
Yes,
It's
she
a
is.
survivor walk, and what we do is raise funds for many women who don't have income and stuff like that, as far as getting tests and paying for certain tests that need to be paid for doing breast cancer, the journey. Many of them don't have money for the co-pays and everything, so we try to help them out doing that process. Don't have to be a member of our church, just have to be a person that's in need with breast cancer. So that walk is tomorrow where we raise funds for those. And this is our third annual walk through the New South Worship Center, and we'll be at Branchwood Park by the Steve Out of Bottle Circle And it's not far. You know, if I'm walking, it's not that far. So, you know, it's a little hump.
We good to see you walking though, beloved.
Yeah, but
Oh, you come back
at
too.
64, I'm not doing too much walking, you know. But it's all good. But I think we have so much going on, and my concern is, you know, we just know what happened up in Maine, and they still have not caught this individual. At first, it was like he injured 50 to 60 people, and it was 22 dead. Now it's 18 dead, and one writer said it was only 15 people seriously injured, and whatever the number is, one is too many. But they have not caught him, that they have now lifted up to stay at home in that particular area because they believe that he has stretched out and taken off. And it's funny, even with that going on, we still have the conflict going on in Israel and Gaza. Between Hamas and Israel, and we realize that's going to really affect us here in the States. Really affect us in the States. I go to a Muslim pharmacy, and the guy that's in there that serves me, Chris, he's from Trinidad, but most of the staff in the pharmacy is Muslims, Palestinian Muslims are from right. A lot of them come from overseas. But I told them the fact of the matter is they have to be protected because they have drugs and everything. And, you know, you got all these people that's snapping here lately. A lot of people are snapping. I mean, mental health is through the roof. Many people are snapping, and we don't know who to trust. I mean, I went up there to get some medicine the other day. It was a guy outside just talking to himself, walking back and forth like he was casing the whole area. And I've learned to watch and pray, Ed. I just don't take anything for granted, you know, just because you say, bruh, yeah, I'm your brother, but I'm watching you. I'm watching you because we can't be too safe. And we know that the Bible tells us to watch and therefore pray. Be watchful. And I encourage everybody to be watchful because there's a lot going on in the land. And I think when you look at that if it was a person of color, they would have been burnt his house down, tore him up and everything. But here it is, this guy was able to shoot up in two places, leave his car running. Now we know it's a rural area. We know it's not like North, it's Maine, but he's still free. And they say he's an expert marksman, but
right.
he's failed some mental things, and you don't know what he has. And I feel and I pray for the people that are affected. I pray for the people that have lost lives in Israel and also in Gaza. I pray for the little babies. I saw two little babies. They didn't even know what was going on. They were bleeding from the head. And I mean, the hospitals are overfilled and all these different things. And it's just a sign of the times. But we realize those of us who are in tune to the sign realize this is crucial time. And this is not the time to be asleep. This is the time to wake up and be aware of what's going on around you. Know your neighbors, know your neighborhood, know those on your job, because many people are under pressure. It's like the boy said back in the day, it's like a jungle out there. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under.
That's right.
You know, don't push me because I'm close to the
That's
edge.
it.
I'm trying hard not to lose my head. And anybody can snap. Myself, anybody can snap. You can come home to a very tumultuous situation at your house and snap. I saw in North Carolina, they found 5 dead in an apartment. I saw people killing their mamas, you know, just different stuff that was unheard of, Barbara, back in the day. There were certain people that were sacred. Big mama, and the babies were sacred. But now everybody's like open season. It's almost like you're hunting for animals. It's almost like you're hunting the bears or something. You'll kill the cubs, you'll kill everybody. Nobody's sacred no more. And life, you know, many people are not. Life is precious. Don't oh, it go by fast. I don't know what he is when. And the pandemic, them 3 years, I just was lost them 3 years. I would have been better off being high. At least I would have been aware of what was going on. I would have been able to nod through it, or ride through it, or bug through it. But I don't know where the time has went. I don't know if I'm the only one, but time is flying. And as I get near the apex of my journey, I want to finish strong. I still believe that the best is in front of me. I still believe that better is coming for me. for the people that I serve, for the people that are around, and for those that want better. And the key is to shake yourself from those who never had better. Learn to appreciate better. And I'm telling you, better is more fun. I have the scripture. The enemy, John 10:10, the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. I come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. Jesus said. I tell people all the time, I have life, but I have not experienced abundance yet. I always have a need. He promised to supply my need every day according to his riches and glory, but he promised me abundant life. I mean abundant where I can look out for others and it don't hurt me. Abundant life where I have enough, more than enough that I can't keep up with what I have.
Oh, I would love that.
Where I own houses and I forget about houses I own that I can give 1 and 2 away to a family that's in need. So I have life, but he said that he had that B clause on it, more abundantly. So I'm living, I'm breathing. My needs are met personally, but what about that abundant life where I can be a blessing to the village, a blessing to my brother and my sister? And can you imagine those that are already blessed? I'm talking about ball players. I'm talking about athletes. I'm talking about professors. I'm talking about Fortune 500 individuals. Not one individual coming forth blessing everybody. Can you imagine that those that got it would come together and bless? They could change a state. They could change a city. They could turn school systems around overnight. The college system, we wouldn't have to worry about what the GOP take away from us. We would already have it. That they have to come back to us and ask if they have some of ours. And that's where I'm at now, pursuing abundant life in my latter days. He's able to do exceedingly and abundantly, talking about the Creator, above all that I can ask or think, according to the power that worketh in me. I'm working the power, Ed, how to cut the power on. How to cut the power on. And I'm not riding on no electrical car. I'm riding on the power of the Spirit of God, because the electrical car, watch this. I rented one in Georgia when I just came back, and that thing cut off at the light. I think it cuts on.
Wow.
And it jumps back on. So, you know, it goes down, it's saving gas and it's saving electricity and everything. I don't need none of that stop and go.
Right.
I need something that's going to flow.
Right.
And I said, wow, I think it's cut off. Is it cut off? It's so silent, it's so quiet. Make a little noise for me.
Right.
Let me know you're living. And that's what some of our people who are blessed, that are able to be a blessing to somebody else, you need to wake up and let your neighbor know you living.
You better come on and talk right.
Too much quiet in our community. Too many people quiet about everything, afraid. Wake up and let somebody know you are living.
Forget let them know you're living. I missed all of what you said. But you know, I have young people that don't realize the importance of communication. They do. I mean, like, I hope I'm tapping into the right conversation.
You're in the right conversation, baby. Go
you
ahead.
know, I mean, it is so sad, so sad that we take so much for granted. You know, I've been to like 5 funerals in the past 4 days. And it's, you know, close people. Close people. Myra Jacobs, Vernis Moore. I mean,
I just saw that. I didn't know Vernis personally, but I've been following him. He was very close to somebody I grew up with.
Okay. Yes.
I want to acknowledge my little brother Damon from the Newark Community Street Team.
Yeah, we're praying for him.
Lost his mother.
Transition.
That's right.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, his mother transition and everything. So, Damon, we lifting you up, Damon Ali, I believe.
Yes, that's my brother. I've done a lot of work with Damon.
I actually need y'all on the prayer front. I got one of my babies that I work with in Equal Justice USA. I call her that because you know, she could be our daughter. She's only in her 30s. Name is Kelsey Hidalgo. She's on life support in a hospital in Central Jersey. She works really hard with us at Equal Justice USA, and you know, and it's becoming one of our emerging stars on the domestic violence front. and has been through a lot with her family on that particular front. And she was the young rock in her family, and this child is at the crossroads, and we really need a whole. I'll put up a big prayer alert in a minute for her. This is it's a young woman that just carrying what she's carrying. Is trauma, visits and shows up in the body, and that's the work that we do has got to include healing, right? Not just knowledge. Knowledge itself by itself ain't gonna get it. We got to do healing work, to move this stuff through our body so it doesn't claim us, because it can.
Yeah, we believe the Creator with you. By His stripes, we believe in the healing. And I think one of the challenges is this being the end of breast cancer month. And I think one of the biggest myths is that the brothers don't get breast cancer. Mm-hmm. And I'm all for the sisters, but brothers, check your chest. Every if it is not there, it may not be a muscle. Mm-hmm. And everybody.
Richard Roundtree just passed, right?
Yeah, just passed. He had breast cancer.
He did a film. I can't remember what the film was. He did a lot of films. He had a great career.
He had pancreatic cancer, though.
In a film, he played a man who had breast cancer.
Breast cancer.
He sure did.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I can't remember the name of the film. It was not one of the bigger films, but it was. I never forgot that, because I had never heard of that when I saw that.
So I tell brothers, be mindful. I know a couple of male survivors, and trust me, they won't muscle down. It won't a muscle. It was a lump. And get yourself checked. Don't be so ashamed and lose your life, because I feel for the sisters. And I mean, the sisters have been disproportionately affected by breast cancer. A lot of times when they go to the doctor, they in third and fourth stage. And sometimes it has metastasized. Right. Sometimes it has moved to other parts of the body. And I know it's all form of cancer. That's why I wore my little football thing with all the cancer. We're not just picking out breast cancer. Cancer is a demon that needs to be addressed and needs to be eradicated. Mm-hmm. Wherever it comes from. Brothers with prostrate, and as you get older and different things, and don't be afraid of bending over and getting checked out, and so many different cancers. And a lot of times we as people of color, when we get to the doctor, it's too late.
Yep. If we go at all.
Yep.
And you need prayer and intervention.
Yep.
Right.
Ali, let's talk about that, because when my sister ended up going home to be with the Lord because of pancreatic cancer.
Yeah, my mother too.
And when Tim and I went to get a colonoscopy, what the doctor told us was, she said that you really don't die from cancer. She said you die from it because you don't intervene, you don't get checked, you don't catch it early, right? And most people don't catch it early, right? Like you just said, for most brothers, right? Because my nephew is like that. He refused to go and get a colonoscopy, mm-hmm. right? Because that crazy male syndrome we got, right? I'm not letting anybody go up my rectum, right? I'm not letting mm-hmm. anybody check me like that. And I remember hearing Steve Harvey say, and my doctor told me that too. He said, you're gonna most surely die then. He mm-hmm. said, you discover you got it, and because you don't want somebody to do a finger test, right? Mm-hmm. You in order to or do a colonoscopy, then you playing Russian roulette with your own life. Because by the time they find out about it, it's too late.
Hell, a blood test.
Or the PSA.
Blood test.
Yeah. Right? PSA. Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
I have a brother in my ministry. This is his third time around. He's dealing with colon cancer and stuff like that, but he keep on fighting. He keeps on coming back. He keeps on recovering. And I tell him, I said, stay strong. We had in our small church, we had a slew of cancer that's rushed through. One sister had colon cancer. That's rushed through. And then not pancreatic, but the breast cancer just rushed through. And then, different cancers. But one thing I can say, we have not lost a member to cancer, a disciple to cancer. What we lost members to was the COVID.
Right.
We lost to a couple to that, but I can say this: cancer, because we are aware of it, because we push it, because we fight it. My late wife died of breast cancer, and when she had 5 years, it went through, and when it came back with a vengeance. She went from 1 to 3.
Wow.
But since her, we have not had one in the ministry die of breast cancer, and to that we give God praise. Because we talk about it. I preach about it.
Right.
We don't play with it.
Mhm.
Go get checked. If I got to go with you,
Right.
I go get checked. If I got to, tell you where to go get checked. If I got to make the arrangements for you, go get checked.
Yes, sir.
My wife tells a story because she was up at St. Barnabas, and this young lady was up there for a test that she needed, and she didn't have the money, and this is during COVID. And I told her, I said, my wife now carries extra money. And I have money in the truck just in case. They would not give her her test because she did not have her copay. Sister Cullen. I said, if that had been a Jewish family, if that had been another family, that would have never happened. They would have got some money together. And I said, never again will one of our sisters, our brothers, be in the doctor's office, as much as it takes us to get you to the doctor.
Wow.
And you up in the doctor's office needing a test to determine what stage you're in or whatever the case may be. And you cannot get the test because you don't have your copay. The devil is a lie.
That's right. And Ali, I think I remember y'all talking about that. And so they would not bill her, right?
They wouldn't bill her.
Wow.
Not for this particular test. The people that did the test would not bill her.
Wow. I can't believe that. That is incredible, bro.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And I mean, even now, I'm getting ready to turn 65 next month. So now I'll be shifting over from my wife's insurance to Medicare.
Right.
And I mean, they got like 900 people that will call you about Medicare.
Right.
I had a sister from Florida call me, walk me through it. I said, sis, handle my business.
Right.
I already got the A and B. I said, handle my business. This is what I need. I depend on you to handle it. And I want to be good.
Right.
Because I ain't got time to go through all these different people and I mess around and be left out because somebody playing around with me.
Right.
And it's just challenging because my wife put in, she needed a CAT scan. It's just challenging. Everything is a copay. I just come back from physical therapy because my hands shake. They tell me, she told me to get the tremble checked out, but I have pain. My thumb locks up. I just come back from physical therapy. Before I went in that back, they wanted that $15 copay.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Wow. Yeah.
They wanted that for something. You can't even buy a meal from McDonald's for you and your girl.
Yeah.
They wanted that $15 copay.
Yeah.
And we really be aware of what's going on. It's time for us to start, myself included, to start eating healthy. Because, I mean, you can't afford fast food no more.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I mean, Dunkin' Donuts, a cup of coffee is almost $5.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it is. It is. Well, if you get what Kim and I drink, right? We drink lattes. It is $5.
Oh man, I mean they jumped up. I mean, I went through KFC, and I mean this is I got a 3-piece something else. It was almost $20. I said, my goodness, everything's going up, and our people can't afford it. Our kids can't afford it. Our kids are hungry.
Yeah. And
we have to be mindful if our children are looking at you a little strange at the restaurant. They hungry.
Yeah.
It don't hurt you to buy a 3-piece and give a piece to them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because they hungry, and it's not because of their fault. Their parents out here bugging out because they can't cope.
Yeah.
They're close to the edge, so they trying to take all these edibles and stuff like that. And just with this fentanyl taking so many people out, it's pathetic.
Yeah.
That is just how he works.
Yeah.
This is how I met this guy right here. Right. We have been following each other, doing our different work around the gun violence. So this is the 90s. This is how far back we go. Right, Ali? Right. And I run into him. He feeding his hood on his block, right? And we finally connected when we started doing the rallies together. And that's how he rides. That's our pastor in the hood. Y'all need to hear these words.
Yeah.
You know, and so what it is it's challenging times.
Yeah.
It's challenging time. They leaving behind 3 and 4 kids, and Big Mama not available no more.
That's right.
You know,
Big Mama's left.
Big Mama, look, check this out. Look at
little Mama's too busy staying little.
Yeah. You know, you look at all these different things now they say are out here that can take us out. And see, you find out when it take out the Caucasian people and take out other folk, they jump on it. They find something for it. But when it's just us, they let it be.
Yeah.
They let it be. They say, "Oh,
I want to lift up my comrade, Sister Zul. You know, this is Black History Month. I'm sorry, this is Black Panther History Month, and I spotlighted her on social media because I'm doing a spotlight of all the women in the party, right? Because they haven't really been getting that due the way they should have. And Zul was in the New York chapter of the party. Zul is martial artist as she is doing hand-to-hand combat with breast cancer, and she's in an advanced form, right? But being the healer that she's been, and the martial artist that she is, she put them two together, and she is fighting that stuff like crazy. Still here. She could have been out of here 2 years ago. Could have been out of here. Refused to give up and refused to confine herself to what the white man and his medicine tells her too. Combining modalities. You understand? And it's going to be featured. We know when Akil Kalfani was on us, he was talking about the things coming up at Essex County College. African martial arts special on November 4th. Guess who's going to be one of the special guest presenters? This warrior woman battling breast cancer, Sister Zul, fighting that devil, fighting that devil. Fighting that devil. We can't accept, what's been prescribed to us by the toxicity of white supremacy. We have to fight that. We have to fight for our health like our lives matter, because they do.
Our lives depend on us fighting. We fight the good fight of faith.
Fight the devil, baby. Fight the devil.
Believe it. When you fight that devil, understand the devil is not omniscient. He's not omnipresent. He's not omnipotent. He's not like the creator. He's in spots. He go to and fro. He go up and down. He picks his spot.
We see you, Belena. We see you.
And when you stand still and you resist the devil, he flees. But don't go to sleep.
That's right.
He only flees for a season.
Do not forget to punch him in his goddamn face.
He's coming back again.
And you hear me?
When you punch him hard. You got
left hook, baby. Bang! You going out of here.
And we know how it is. You fight in your relationship with your children. You fight for your relationship with your spouse or significant other. You fight for your relationship with our co-workers, fellow worshipers. You have to fight for every relationship, because so many people have given up on the fight, and many people have not learned how to fight.
That's right. Yeah, that's powerful.
They too busy wearing makeup, covering up, instead of letting their natural beauty show forth and say, this is what I really look like. This is really what it is. I'm not knocking makeup. Don't get me wrong. To each his own. I'm not knocking it. But at least don't let that.
It's a natural way to do that too.
Yeah, don't let that be. Don't let that made up face be you when it's not really you. That's the person that's you is the one that wakes up in the morning with the bad breath and the crushes in your eyes, and your nose all stopped up. And your drawers and got up in your behind and you scratching, that's the real you. And that's the you that the creator sees. And then he allows you to talk to him in that condition.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Then you go in
the bathroom to clean up
and face the world, Sometimes I'm in the bed on top of the pillow saying, Lord, here I am. You
Yeah,
know, this is a day. Am I woke?
I can't say married now. They'll see me in the morning.
Yeah, this is the day that you have made. I'm going to rejoice and get back. Be glad about it. Let these feet hit the ground. Let these feet hit the ground. I know I don't look
crack it up.
later. I got to go in there and I got to get these questions out of my eyes. I got to release some water. Thank God that I can go.
Yeah, all our prostate mess.
Yeah, don't want no slow stream. Let it be a rush stream. I don't want to stand there 5 minutes waiting for something.
And on the question of makeup and all of that too, those are the kind of things that go. Our largest organ is our skin.
Yeah.
So when those chemicals go onto your skin, they go also into your bloodstream,
into your pores.
Daughters, granddaughters, hear me, into your lymphatic system, right? All those chemicals that our sisters have, been taught to put in their hair to make their hair straight. All that skin, bloodstream, lymphatic systems, a correlation to breast cancer.
It's a lot of factors.
There's a lot to say about being natural and doing natural, the natural beauty thing, natural hair, beyond just being cute. We have our own aesthetic as being natural and African. And we also have, that's also a part of us reclaiming our temples, meaning our bodies, right? Reclaiming our well-being.
Well, you said a key word, Bob, reclaiming our temple.
That's right.
When I go through my sickness, with all the different issues I have, it'd be like something has invaded my body. That's not me. So I walk around and I wait. I tell people all the time, I have to wait. I'm already healed.
That's right.
I have to wait till my body catch up with my healing.
That's right.
My mind is healed.
Right.
Because he promised me by his stripes, I am healed. And so what happens is when your body is going through changes, sometimes you wake up and say, I don't recognize this joker. I hold on to my mind. Let this mind, because so many people are losing it, Alzheimer and dementia. No, I wake up. If I can't remember something, I say, Lord, bring it back to my remembrance. I'm not taking all that for granted that at a certain age, I got to be senile and all that. The devil is a liar.
You better come on here.
That's my
mind. Good bastard.
Listen.
I need my
that's
mind.
Key. This right here, that's a prayer all by itself. When you open your eyes, thank you guys for welcoming me back. I had to find Wi-Fi connection. I'm ready to sit on a panel in about 10 minutes. But the truth is, that prayer in the morning, first prayer is, I'm awake, thank you, God. And the second prayer is, thank you for keeping my mind. And your mind controls so many things. People don't realize a lot of your sicknesses are connected to your mental state of mind. Some people just think sick. That's why they call folks hypochondriacs, and they got all these other terms for people who might not even have nothing wrong, but they just got to find something wrong. But as Pastor Ali stated, so a man thinketh. Well, he didn't say this, but I'm gonna say, so a man thinketh, so is he. And so, if you keep on thinking these things, yeah. And you're right, First Lady. She's talking about something else right now. She said you got to wear masks. I keep telling folk, y'all was laughing at Michael Jackson when he was walking around with the mask and gloves on. And then before you know it, in 2020, everybody had on masks and gloves. Well, nobody talking about MJ. It was almost, and so she's right. To protect yourself. And I thought about when I was a little child, and now we done got off the sick thing, but I was a child and I used to go outside in the wintertime, and you know how you blow smoke and you can see the smoke. So pretending like you're smoking, and really don't have no cigarettes, but you see the atmosphere of the coolness and the vapor that's created by the moisture in the air and the cool wind. Well, when there is no cool wind and there's heat, that same atmosphere that you're spitting and talking and coughing. I said, Lord, even though COVID over, I really do think we should continue to wear masks, even though we've got very lax First Lady Ali. Yes, we have. But I don't like people. I get very uncomfortable when people get too close in my face, because it don't take but a second for a bug to jump out of their mouth in your nose. But Pastor Ali, you are 100% correct. And now listening on the audience needs to understand that, listen, you got to think positive, even in a negative environment. If you come into that environment, bring positive with you. I tell people, don't worry about the report until you get your report. You go to the doctor worrying about having something wrong. They ain't even told you nothing wrong, but you just feel a certain way, and you worrying about something you haven't even got a report on. So yeah, your mind. You say by your stripes we are healed, but Lord, just keep our minds healed. Keep our people realizing that they've got to listen. She is not playing. The first lady of this generation says you got to wear masks in those nail salons, because when you can smell the nail salon before you walk in the salon, those toxins are harmful. Those toxins are harmful. Some of the environments we walk up and down the street are harmful. That's just in a closed environment. You know, we talk about. I was at a meeting the other day where we done got off for something else.
No, we rolling.
We dealing with toxicity and
clean air.
all that is caused to breast cancer and all that other mess. That's
clean
right.
air. That's where I am today, with a group of women. Sit on a panel. Like I said, I've never. Thank you, God. But people who have done the ministry of cancer, it's a blessing to those who are survivors, those who are survivors, but those who might not have, who have succumbed to that ministry, at the same token, you got a lesson from them as well. I'm anxious, I'm excited rather, that we have someone that's married to a strong survivor. Watch this. She's so strong that when he got sick, she told the devil, you got the right one now. Because she came out with all gloves, all 6 pairs. The red ones, the blue ones, the green. I would go up to the hospital and I'd say, Lord, have mercy. Listen, have mercy on the enemy. Because when she finished with him, ain't nothing going to be left. He going to be running back to hell, not walking, messing with her husband.
That's right.
He ain't gonna be, matter of fact, he's gonna leave clothes and all baggage he thought he was gonna bring with him so they could throw it in the garbage. Because whoever Belina Ali is praying for, which was her husband, she was like, I mean, you can walk up there and you like Muhammad Ali, what? Mayweather, who? Shoot, she was like, she walked around there like she was in the ring.
Right.
And as soon as she knew he was all right, he ain't have to open his mouth. And that's the strength and the belief and the positive and the firmness and the confidence you have to have, not just with sickness, in life.
That's right.
We've got so many challenges right now in life, Baba, with what's going on in the world. I told people, don't y'all get so lax, because look what just happened with that man. Was it Maine?
It's Maine, yeah.
Look at you. We around here thinking that the Middle East is a long way from here. You ain't got to do nothing but look across the highway. You drive up the road.
Right, 95.
So the mind. They said that he had some things going on with his mind. Listen, all of us are just a decision.
That's right.
A decision. A decision away from being homeless, a decision away from being unemployed. Listen, nobody can make a decision on my mind. This is my mind. My mind I'm talking about. Now, you might be able to make a decision about my life, but my mind will determine how I'm going to handle that decision somebody thought they was going to make about my life. So a lot of people, you're talking about people going postal, mental. Wait a minute. Let me just go somewhere else. I know we wasn't even talking this. We was talking physical and mental, but mental health, mental illness is so real. Mm-hmm. I tell people, Brother Ed, that some of us are walking around just haven't been diagnosed.
That's right.
For real. We on the edge, but nobody knows it because we contain it so well. Just like people that are functional alcoholics and people that are functional addicts, they call them functional because they go to work every day. But those are the ones that make sure they go to work so they can get a check, so they can get that next hit. When they get real bad, they become dysfunctional, and the check don't matter, and then become, Brother Ed, can I borrow $10? I'm just saying, the mind.
But Roundtree, that's how Ali started when he said it's like a jungle sometimes. It makes
right.
me wonder how I keep from going under, right?
Yeah,
That Grandmaster Flash song, right? You
yeah,
know, and that's reality for all of us, right? You know,
absolutely.
because people want to act like everything is normal and everything is not normal, right?
Mhm.
It's not normal. And it really is about how you deal with it. But I think what I'm hearing from Ali, and especially what I'm hearing, from Queen Ali, what I'm hearing from her is that it is this faith, right? That we've got to have our faith in God no matter what comes at us, right? We've
That's right.
got to be able to turn on that faith because Ali was talking about no matter what it looks like, right? He's got to believe that everything is going to be better no matter how it looks today, right? Because remember, Ali, you were talking about your body has to catch up with you,
You
right?
got to catch up with my mind.
With your
Yeah,
mind. But
yeah,
do you talk about faith, brother Ed? And scriptures makes it very plain.
They
Faith
thrown
is
the
the substance
machine.
of things hoped for and the
yeah.
evidence of
Things
things not seen. That means you might not be able to see it, but you got to have faith that the evidence is going to come forth and
Yeah,
prove that because you stood on faith. You always hear people say faith without works is dead, all of that. But faith is the evidence of
that's
things hoped for. So you're going to pray, you're going to have hope in God, you're going to trust God, that what you're going to eventually see the evidence of that you don't see today. You might
that's
not see your healing right now, but you feel it. Your mind's telling you it's there. And at some point, it's going to be, there it is. There
yeah,
it is. I told you I was going to be healed, And watch this. What people leave out, hear me, what people leave out is if it be God's will.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Because
yeah,
everything is not through our, you can have a whole lot of faith,
Mhm.
a
But it got
whole
to
lot of
be in
faith,
His will.
but it's got to be in God's will.
yeah. And the thing that I think that we do know is that based on what Ali said is we know that healing is God's will. Why? Because Ali said early when he first came on, he said the scripture says we are healed by his stripes, right?
Okay, so I
No,
don't mean to put
we
no
know.
damper on your statement, but you know what? And that's true. That all of that is true. But we sit around here wanting my grandma to live to be 175 years old, and she's sick and in pain, and we want, this is what we want, to say by his stripes, grandma gonna be healed. Grandma 100 years old, 120 years old, sick, and we talking about by his stripes we are healed. Who's healed? We need to be healed because when God called her from labor to reward, it was God's will to maybe call her home.
Well, let's
Not
look
what
at it
it is.
this way. Look at it this way. He promised us 3 score and 10,
That's
70.
it.
If I
That's
score,
Right.
it.
four score.
That's
No,
it.
got to
Hard
get
time
Anything
the
after
after
that,
whole,
that,
the whole
no matter your
score.
station.
Mhm.
anything after 70, baby, you on
You,
extra strength
overtime, I
time,
call it.
Mm,
I call it overtime.
mm,
for
And then
real.
if you get over 80, you're on time and a half.
What?
mm.
Yes, sir.
So,
Yes, sir.
so, so, yeah,
I
by
got
his
an
stripes,
I got an uncle that's 90. And
That's
he
right.
he go
Every
sit up there
time
and
you
watch
say the
National
New York and the New
Geographic.
York accent, Allah ya Akbar is some of that. That's
Mm-hmm.
Allahu Akbar, late man was 97 years old, went to the funeral today.
right. Wow.
And the truth is, the daughter couldn't stop saying, Daddy, Daddy, Daddy. You know, I realized that there was no more I could do for my father
Mm-hmm.
when God called him from. I couldn't allow
To Allah do we
some,
belong, and to Allah do we return.
some things we want healing from. It's just not going to happen. Our minds, those who are left behind to live, listen, to still be living,
Yeah,
we
please.
have to ask for God's grace to continue to sustain us, to keep our minds, and we cannot lose our. They say faith is the key and prayer unlocks the door. Is that it? Prayer
And
is the
faith is the
key.
substance.
Prayer is the key. And
Yeah.
faith unlocks the door. I'm sorry.
You
Prayer
got it.
is the key and faith unlocks the door. That's a
But
song. That's a
but
song.
but
Some
let's
guys
look at the
made many.
scripture. Healing does not mean cured.
Exactly. Exactly.
Does not
That's
mean
it.
it will not
That's
come
what I
back
was trying to
again.
get to.
Healing
That's what
means
I was
that
trying to
you
get
are
to.
whole in spite of what you're dealing with.
That's what I was trying to get
You
to.
know, I got a little boy in my church, my little deacon, he's 30 years old. He been incapacitated all his life. And can't nobody mess with his faith. He can't do nothing for himself. In a wheelchair, a carriage, he got to be pushed, he got to be dressed, everything.
But he shout. Wait a minute, but he shout.
But he shouting.
But he shout.
Waving. He
He
doing
give
what he
God more
got to
praise
do.
than the folks that can get up on their feet.
In his mind,
And
he whole. As far as I'm concerned, he whole.
He whole.
Because he depends on that his needs are going to be met every day. He whole.
That's us looking through spiritual lenses, because everybody don't look through the same lenses that some of us do. Some of us look through natural lenses, and what you see in the natural is a whole lot different, Baba, and you know this, than what we see in the spiritual. Like, so sometimes people say, I think Chief of Staff said to me a few years ago, we were talking about something, I can't even remember what the subject was, and he said, you know, you find something, you're going to always find. He said, you're going to always find the good in everything. And I said, that's because there is something good in everything and everybody. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you came from. We cannot say we were created in God's image. And this now what we do with that piece is something different, but it's there. It's there. And at some point, based on how you deal with individuals, whether it be their sickness, whether it be their mental case. We have a guy right now I want to lift up in prayer. He's over at university. His name is Poindexter. You probably know Poindexter. Holyoke, they call him Holyoke or something. He's going to have open heart surgery on Monday they're going to do it. And everybody looks at this young man differently. They look at him because he's wild. He talks different. He's not smooth and laid back like a Bishop Carlton. He's different. He's different. He's very wired, but he's one of the hardest working individuals you'd ever want to meet. He's laying up in the hospital. Family hasn't even been there yet. Prayerfully, they'll be there shortly, but we have to, the eyes I see him through is one of the most phenomenal, hardworking, nicest brothers I ever met. There are people that say he's a pain in the butt. They say he's extra. He's this, he's that. What lenses are you looking through when you're talking to somebody that needs healing? Whether it be not pure.
Because when me and Ed and Baba, when we were 16 and 17, we would look at a hoopty, a raggedy hoopty, and we could see the best in that. You may have to stop.
That's what we used to steal.
But y'all wasn't stealing to kill. Y'all was stealing to take parts. Shoot.
Regardless, because we couldn't afford the parts. But we got in a hoopty and just said got a little rust in it.
But they wasn't carjacked.
Put a pillow up in there. If it had a hole in the seat, put a pillow up in there, and we'd be riding.
Wait a minute. They said back in the day, because see, I didn't know no car thieves, right? But they didn't do it with the things they're doing today. Is just like unbelievable. But back in the day, they said they would take them. They wouldn't hurt nobody. They wouldn't grab nobody out no car. They would just wait until they were able to get a car, and maybe they would go get some tires or get some pieces. Now it's they take your car to go get 5 Mercedes. Things were different, I believe. Pastor Ali, guys used to fight, and the best man won. Now you might win, but 6 months later, they might be waiting for you to take you out for the rest of your life. It's all different thing. So we have to have faith across the board, faith in our community, faith in those who we think are failures, because with looking through natural lenses, something might look like a failure, but it might be a winner to God. It depends on how you're looking at it. Healing body. Look at and I can't stop talking about First Lady Ali, because when I tell you
some testimony too. I hope y'all followed on the chat. She laying out some testimony.
Yep, and it's gonna help somebody. We're in breast cancer awareness month, but let me say this: we set aside these months for clergy appreciation and Mama's Day and Daddy's Day, and whoever came up with this stuff just needed to come up with a day to do some stuff. But the truth of the matter is, clergy should be appreciated every day. Ed Riley's and Baba Zaid should be appreciated every day. Pastor Ali's should be appreciated every day. Why do we have to set aside one day to appreciate fathers or 1 month to look at breast cancer? That's good. So all month we do that. But people are dying from breast cancer every single day. Domestic violence is happening right now as we speak. Right. But we don't talk about it every day. We highlight these things certain times of the year. I told somebody the other day, I met with 40 preachers. You know what I told them? Yeah, election time is coming up November 7th, but y'all gonna wait till now to start telling people to vote? We need to talk about these things every single day when the platform allows it. Just like Baba has his platform, Brother Ed, you've given a whole bunch of folk a platform. Pastor Ali with full gospel, and he used to be out there with the bullhorn activists. But we pick and choose, and I guess that's a God assignment, because whatever God sends you to do, if you're listening, that's what you go and do. But we should be talking. When I talk to the clergy, I don't just wait to talk about, and I told them this. Do you know election is November 7th? And now we just talking about folks voting. This needs to be a conversation. I said from the pulpit, some of our sermons need to be at least once a month. The importance of our voice. Not in October, not October, November. It's like Mother's Day. So we April trying to figure out what we're gonna buy a mother for Mother's Day, because it's on the way. But we know it's coming in January. So there's so many things that, and I guess I'm on a roll with just when I thought about this sister that's on here and how she's beat it, got her hair back, created her own hair serum when her hair started. She was selling hair serum. Now she back to baking all them good cakes and stuff. If Blaine Ali can bake some cakes, I want y'all to know. That's just a shout out. She can make any kind of flavor you want: carrot, chocolate, peach, orange, lemon. That's a PSA. As we speak about mental healing, the mayor's in a men's meeting right now, trying to help some brothers with their mind over Central right now, trying to help them develop their mind. Y'all waiting on me? I'm supposed to be sitting in a panel. They only started 10 minutes ago, so I'm going to go into the panel.
We love you, sis.
I love you. I miss you. What is coming up? Is there anything coming up? Tomorrow I have a domestic violence walk with Jackie Limehouse. Where are we at, Brian? Look on the thing. It's Harvest. I don't. What Harvest? Yeah, I'm not going to announce that. I'm talking about domestic violence. Listen, let me just thank everybody who came out and supported our 10th annual Newark Interfaith Alliance breakfast. It was phenomenal.
Heard number good.
10th year, and Pastor McClurkin listen. This was his subject: love in action. And just a little piece from his message. He spoke to the mosques, the masjids, the synagogues, and the Baptist churches. And we all know he's a Christian. And he said, y'all know I'm a Christian, but can I tell you something? Sometimes y'all get on my nerves. And the reason I gather I'm saying this is because we're talking about what's going on in Palestine. We're talking about all the hurt and the war that's going on. I wonder, because the Bible declares the poor will always be with us. I'm wondering, will there ever be a time when we, as faith leaders across the board, I know in Newark we don't have this problem, but faith leaders set examples. And I gather maybe it's just not enough faith leaders, or maybe I should say spiritual folks that can look through the spiritual lenses in high places because in high places, you got to have a conscience. In high places, you don't compromise the lives of God's people. In high places, it should be about what's in the best interest of all people and not greed and not no sense of concern for the lives of others. When you get to the point where somebody else's mother don't matter but yours should, then that means how much do you care about your own mother? When somebody else's babies don't matter, when somebody else's health doesn't matter, while we blowing up hospitals and cutting off babies' heads and holding people hostages, we talking about healing, and then we look over here in Maine, and somebody with a mental condition now has a whole bunch of people. And listen, I haven't been following the news. Can anybody tell me, Pastor Ali, did they catch him?
They haven't caught him yet.
You know, I've been so busy today. Now they haven't caught him. Now either he's somewhere alive or somewhere, and we don't know. I think about that man who killed his whole family and lived around for 40 years. And when they found him, he was with a new family. What's that guy named Linda? They made a movie about him. Just be watching.
John Liz.
That's him. Just watch as well as pray, everybody. Those who are tuned into the disciples tonight, watch as well as pray and realize everybody is somebody's family. And everyone is fighting some type of battle. It doesn't matter how small it is. It does not matter. A battle is a battle. And you never know who or what somebody has to deal with. Just like you have to deal with something, a lot of people have to deal with it. So put yourself, I always said, Brother Ed, Brother Ali, when I was working at the front desk in the mayor's office, they can't see me. They don't know. I answer the phone. They don't know who I am, and I don't know who they are. So no matter what I'm going through in life, that person that cannot see me, I shouldn't be allowing them to feel that energy. And I should be able to, no matter what I'm going through, since I can't see them and I'm there to provide a service, be able to give them an energy that by the time they get to the good afternoon, how can I help you, that they can feel the energy of something positive that's going to help them deliver better than cuss me out. That happens too. That hasn't happened in a very long time. It used to happen when I sat at the front desk for Cory Booker. But anyway, yeah, I just wanted to leave those words because, brother, we got a lot going on in this world, a lot going on in our country, a lot going on in our municipalities. And like we know elections are getting ready to happen. We know that people are doing programs all over the place for domestic violence. But in reference to our beautiful women and men that don't get checked, that don't take care of themselves when it comes to the doctors and the hospitals. Listen, call 733-3794-973. If you are not sure of whether you can get coverage, I got personal connections, or professional, I should say, not personal, in every hospital in the city of Newark. You need to go get the girls checked out, get them checked out. You need to go get the basement looked at, get it checked out. And men, you do the same thing. Because sometimes by the time they find out,
Too late.
I don't think it's never too late when you find out. But you got to do what you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's meant for you to be around, you're going to be here if you do what you got to do. And if it's not, there's nothing you can do. But at least you know you've done everything you were supposed to stay here and to take care of yourself. Especially,
I like when you say get the basement checked out.
I like that too. I like that too.
I like that. I'm happy to use that.
Watch this. Watch this. Hold on. Even if no one's going in the basement, get it checked out.
Get it checked out, so if somebody want to go down there, at least you know it's in good shape.
I like that. That's a nice way to say it.
Leave it to me, right, Baba?
You know, everybody want a men's cave in the basement, so you got to get the basement checked out.
Basement checked out.
That's right.
I know that Minister Farrakhan has.
Sister
Minister
Farragut.
Farrakhan has, wait a minute, Minister Farrakhan has an event coming up. You'll see it on social media tomorrow. There's so many events coming up. We have rent equity. We have so much stuff. I invite you all to go to the City of Newark's Facebook page or call my office for anything that you might be interested in finding out about. There's also the Newark People's Assembly, Corinthia McElroy. You can call 973-733-6400. I'm on my way into a panel discussion. As I said, I'm already 14 minutes late for that. But this is so much more important because platform is a platform. And if you got something to say to somebody, those folks are waiting for me. They're going to be in there for another hour and a half. To God be the glory. And I thank God for the invitation to sit with this organization called Ironbound Community Corporation.
Are you with
Along with,
ICC? Those are my sons and daughters over in the East Ward. Yes,
yes,
my
that's
environmental
exactly.
justice warriors.
Well, you know I'm at large, so don't tell me. Listen, somebody
Mhm.
told me one time, "Oh, you don't have to worry about the North. We could if we'll handle it if you can't make it." I said, "Baby, if I'm invited, I'm coming because I'm at large. Okay, I'm I'm coming. If I'm invited in the North, South, Central, East, or West,
You
I'm
got the
on
love.
my way if I'm free because the people don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care. And part of caring is showing up. How about that? I love each and every one of you. Pastor Ali, I love you. Minister Abdul
Love
Haq
you, bro.
Muhammad, we miss you. Lady Belina, I love you. Here come the Sergeant of Arms, getting ready to shut it down. Brother Jonathan,
Hey, how are you?
Okay,
She
okay.
on fire.
I,
She on
I
fire.
saw, I saw Brother Jonathan at Central High School. Was it Central? No. Over
That's right.
Donald Payne Tech, I think it was. Yeah, I came on over there in Double Park so I could get him and see him in his element. Oh, he was real professional. I want y'all to know he was handling his handle. Yes, he was. Brother Jonathan, I love you. I love you,
Love
Brother
you back.
Ed. Love you, Pastor Ali, Brother
Love you,
Baba,
baby.
my comrade on the other side of this. Listen, on the other side of the spiritual thing, there's some things we have to do, and we can't be scared to do it. God did not
Right.
give us a spirit of fear. Thank God for the leadership in
Right.
this city. There ain't no punk. Thank God for all of you that don't mind speaking truth to power. And thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. Lady Kim, you are still as beautiful as ever, making Brother Ed look so good. He better recognize he looks so good
He
because there's
does.
a Kim Riley. God bless you.
That's right. That's a
And
piece.
and Reverend Roundtree, the check is in the mail.
All right.
I love you guys. Keep me in your prayers.
We love it. Go
All
ahead,
right,
do
we done.
you good now.
Disciple
And
this night. Overseer Brian Ali, and we thank you for taking the time to share with Minister Roundtree and myself, Baba, Zaid, and Ed Rowley. And we want you to know this was all politics and local. Disciples, we are out to next month. Peace and
Yep.
love. Be blessed.
Great show, Ali. Listen, man, let me just say before you go, you helped a lot of people tonight, my brother. You know,
Yeah.
you always dropping that science, man. So
Volunteer.
really appreciate that, man. And y'all spoke to my spirit tonight. Thank you.
God be the glory.
All right,
Peace
brother.
and love.
Peace, brother.
Allah ya Akbar.
Thank you. So that is the disciple segment of All Politics Are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. Where all politics are local, and we are now on the next segment, which is a real. It is a real tough segment to have, right? Because when we're talking about we're going to be talking about the Middle East. We're going to be talking about the Israeli Palestinian conflict and the way that we talk about it, right? I'm an educator. There are a lot there. TJ Whitaker is an amazing educator, as is Chris Duran. They are all and they are also both activists and have an understanding of a real need to teach education and history and on matters of race and class in ways that are that are productive, that are good for the people that we all serve. We all do that, and in this has been especially difficult to be able to teach in ways that, because that emotions are inflamed, you had a horrible incident, or you had horrible series of things happen. You had many Jewish people murdered in Israel. You have a situation of ongoing structural violence in Gaza, right? Those of us who talk about structural violence, we talk about like how poverty, how induced poverty, how if you have high rates of like employment and violence, even if it happens on a micro scale, those are things that are actually violent, right? Those are kill people. And so there's been a lot of threats of people's jobs that we saw with the kids at Harvard who put out a letter blaming the state of Israel for all of the things that happened. You heard a lot of backlash as a result of that, and social threats that are along those lines, right? And I think that having the debate, right, being able to talk about how to have that debate becomes really, really important, right? Like, I believe in civil civic discourse. I believe that we have to be able to talk about important issues. And I actually believe that part of the reason why the United States' role in this conflict, which I think largely has been over the years counterproductive, is that we can't have we don't know how to have honest conversations about race, about class, about foreign policy in ways that will actually bring out the fullness of a debate. So with this, we have two incredible educators with us. We have TJ Whitaker from South Orange and also from MAPSO. We have Chris Duran, who is a grad student, who is an activist. And the overwhelming idea, right, that when we're having these conversations, like they're ultimately human rights conversations. They're ultimately about the rights of people. They're ultimately about how to talk about and deal with oppression and the oppressed, and violence, and all of those things that come together. So with that, I remember I had a brief conversation, and we could start with you, TJ Whitaker. You talked about specifically South Orange and some pressures in terms of teaching and talking about the Palestinian situation and dealing with the human rights, right? Like right now we see 7,000 bombs were dropped on the Palestinian territories. Israel says this is a response to an unprecedented incursion and violation of human rights that happened in Israel. And there have been a lot of conversation about this. How are we talking about this? How are we teaching this? What has been the pushback?
Thank you for having me, Jonathan. So I guess I'll start with, Maps for Freedom School. We've been in existence since 2016, and we've always, our stance has always been on the side of Palestinian human rights, on the right of Palestine to resist this 75-year war. And so it's important that people understand that, and again, I think our audience does, but like this didn't just start in, on October 7th, that what the Palestinian people have been living through, their occupation, the extent to which every, ounce of their lives are controlled, by the Israelis, has been going on for decades. And so when we talk about the genocide that's going on, and that's not something that we came up with, but every international human rights organization has signed on and understands what's happening. So
and the United Nations also came out recently, and they're talking about the level of killing when Netanyahu said for 1.1 million people to leave northern Gaza. That was widely seen as a cruel joke, as in like it was impossible for them to leave within that time. And even if they did leave, there's a definition of ethnic cleansing that is very, very similar to tell an entire group of people to leave. Now, Israel says, and Benjamin Netanyahu, and they say that the reason why they're leaving is because they're going to conduct war and they want to save them. But the Palestinians are calling that another Nakba, right? Like exactly. It's a mass exodus, it's a mass leaving. And I think that if you cannot talk about one without the other, if you cannot say like, hey, Israel's saying this, but, right, we have, when you ask 1.1 million people to leave, what does that mean? What does
And-
that mean
and-
practically?
I think it's great your last statement. You said, Israel saying this, but, or Israel saying this, like, however. And with the Zionist presence that exists in many of our communities, but definitely in South Orange and Maplewood, when you get to the however, that's when you are, labeled anti-Semitic, right? Palestinians don't get to exist, right? We literally have students in the Jewish student organization who are going up to administrators telling them that they shouldn't be using the word Palestine because it doesn't exist, right? This is on the heels of our superintendent, who happens to be a Black man, right? Who the first letter that he sent out right after the October 7th incursion was actually decent, right? In our mind. But then what happened was the local Zionists in South Orange and Maplewood put pressure on him, and he came out with a second letter that literally disappeared the Palestinians, right? Used the language of dehumanization, right? Used the language of Islamophobia, and that's what opened the door for students and fellow teachers to begin attacking, again, verbally.
No, here's a question, right? Like, you use the term Zionist, right? And there many may hear that and say that when you say Zionist, that is that how they would identify themselves? Is it an anti-Semitic push? Is it like there might be pushback on, or the other part is, if Zionists are presented as being bad, are you saying that a Jewish state should not exist, right? Like, in terms of that term. So just a clarification on the term. What do you mean by Zionist? And is, because for me, a lot of these debates, James Baldwin's essay, right, had a famous essay saying Black people are anti-Semitic because they're anti-white, right? And in the essay, James Baldwin is talking about the ways in which oppression is complex and nuanced, and that in Harlem, in the context that he's talking about it, Jews were white. They were acting like white people. Black people have been oppressed by white people. Like, people can be multiple things at one time. People can be oppressed by larger society, victims of anti-Semitism, but also have the ability to act in ways that reflect white supremacy.
Exactly.
That's what James Baldwin was talking about. That's the complexity of the essay. So are you talking about, like, quote, Zionists? Is that how they refer to themselves, or white people, right? Like for example, when Irish people were members of the police force in mass and were committing vast police brutality, violence against Black people, it wasn't because of their religion. It wasn't because they were Irish Catholic. It was because they were white, right? Like, their relationality to oppression was that whiteness. So in that context, in that nuanced, complicated context, what do you mean by the term Zionist? And is that the way they would self-identify? And then, continue. Because I think all these things are important in the conversation.
I do think it's important. And I appreciate your contextualization of Baldwin. I think, like, again, Maxwell Freedom School would definitely agree with that. I would definitely agree with that. In our community, though, I would definitely differentiate between those who identify as Jewish and those who may or may not, right, self-identify as Zionists in terms of their identity, in terms of the policy that they support, in terms of, if we want to go back to, Theodore Herzl and the existence of the Jewish state that does not acknowledge, all right, Palestinians, right? And so, if we're talking about in the history, going back to the Black Liberation Movement, I learned in our study groups that all Jews are not Zionists, right? But all the Zionists are racist, right? And it's because of the policy of Zionism, right? And so we understand that a lot of the actions of these folks, again, is also in the framework of white supremacy, right? Again, it can be both. It doesn't have to be, right, either or, all right? But if just to go back to our actions as Maps or Freedom School, right? It's because there are Jewish members of the South Orange Maplewood community who do support Maps for Freedom School, who do support the Palestinians, right to existence, the Palestinians' right to resist, and they are on the opposite side from those who, again, may or may not identify as Zionists, but definitely in their words, right, in their actions, in the policies that they support, in their attempt to silence those of us who would attempt to teach the truth about Palestine. We have to kind of call that what it is.
Now, and the nuanced pushback, right? Like, there are some people who interpret Zionism not as racism, say that Zionism isn't racism. One of the things they would say is that Zionism is simply everyone who believes that a Jewish state should exist, right? That Israel should exist as a Jewish state can be a Zionist. That isn't your definition. I think your definition is something different, like possibly more in line with what certain right-wing settlers think of, like the concept of a Jewish state that doesn't acknowledge anyone in Palestine, right? Doesn't acknowledge a Palestinian state. Is there that nuance? Like, can you explain that to me? Because I think that
here's the point.
Becomes an important pushback.
Because I don't like want to get. We don't even get to this point where we have the discussion. Right. We bring up Palestinian humanity and a Palestinian right to exist, and we're late. We don't get to this point. We were at the table. Like, folks don't want to sit down, right? They would prefer to label us, right? To pressure the superintendent and the Board of Education, those that are in power, to shut down Maps for Freedom School, right? They don't want us to have the dialogue with our students. They don't want us to teach the truth. So, for example, we've had teachers, like 2 days ago, we had an emergency meeting in the social studies department. I teach in both English and social studies. We had an emergency meeting at the end of the day on Wednesday because one parent, right, sent in an email complaining about I think it was a John Green video on Palestine, a crash course on Palestine. People should go and check it out, right? John Green. It's the mildest thing you could, just to get the conversation started. But one parent email, all right, gets called for an emergency meeting, right? If one parent called in, one Black parent called in to complain about a racist, there wouldn't be an emergency meeting, right? If one parent called in, even in South Orange Maplewood, to complain about an LGBTQ video, there wouldn't be an emergency meeting. These people have the power, right? And when I say these people, I mean
I was gonna say, right? Like, because
I want to be
a lot
specific.
of it becomes very linguistic in terms of.
No. I'm being specific. When I say these people, I'm talking about the folks in South Orange Maplewood, right, who may or may not identify as Zionists, who won't even allow us to have the conversation, right? So they want to shut down the teacher. So they're emailing the department chair, they're emailing the superintendent, they're emailing the Board of Ed, shut down Maps for Freedom School, shut down these teachers from teaching. So again, we would love, and this is what Maps for Freedom School is doing. We're in the process of organizing teach-ins, right? Because that's what we do as educators, to bring the truth. And so what we've done over the last couple of weeks, we've reached out to our partners at the Zen Education Project. We've reached out to our partners at Rethinking Schools. And so there are letters of support coming in from academics, right, and historians who carry some weight, right, who are supporting our efforts, again, to teach the truth. And I'll finish up with this. Last spring, in May, at the behest of Maps for Freedom School, our own board created a policy. It's the policy number is now 4470 that literally encourages teachers to teach the truth about history, United States history, international history. And so again, we just want the opportunity to be able to have this conversation that you're.
So what you're saying is that like this is a conversation that requires a lot of nuance, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
Even in the point where you're like these people, and then you're like, well, no, wait, this is what I'm talking about. Wait, this is what I'm talking about, right? So if you're in the context of education, right, like there has to be a space to have dialogue that is academically supported. Like in the last few days,
Mhm.
I've been doing some, I mean, everybody's been talking about this. This has been a thing that you cannot escape. There is some really good, and I teach debate. As you know, I'm a debate coach.
Yeah.
Part of what I teach is about evidence, and I teach about the importance of evidence and being able to differentiate between different types of evidence. And, when looking at some articles, Foreign Affairs has had a really good essay back in April called Israel's One State Reality. And in that, they are talking about like the ways in which sovereignty actually function, right? Like if you
Mhm.
control like land and if you control air and you can keep people's water off, if you control what goes in and out, right? Effectively, even though they're not in Gaza, they are sovereign over Gaza because like they don't have the people within, right? Don't have that full control like a country. Like they're not a country, right? They're a
Mhm.
territory and things are dictated for them, right? Yes. Is there are decisions that Palestinians can make? Yes, but no one is saying that they're like sovereign, sovereign territories, right? That's the whole reason they're not a state. They're not recognized as a state. They aren't, and so they're like, if it's a one state reality, that becomes very problematic, right? In terms of what we're talking about, because then if it's one state, then the sovereign is responsible for the protection of rights of the people within that state, right? Like if you are actually even an occupier, right? Like if you're still responsible for the rights of the people who you're occupying, right? Like they need to be protected by the people who have the overwhelming military power, et cetera, right? Within that region. And that becomes it becomes a complicated question. And it becomes a question of whether or not what we're seeing in Israel is something that can be considered, if not apartheid because of the nuances of race, something that, according to the article, rhymes with apartheid, right?
Mhm.
Like, and just being able to have those discussions, I think, is good and academically grounded, right? Like this is coming from Foreign Affairs. Foreign Affairs also
Mhm.
had a really good series debating this article. There were a series of like, can this two-state solution be saved? And there were a series of writers who wrote some people were very against it. Some people talked about how, there was certain favoritism played by the authors. Other people were talking about various nuances of it, but the authors also had a chance to respond. So if anyone can, once is really interested about this and the ways debates about this can look, I think conservative and Foreign Affairs is a conservative magazine, right?
Mhm.
By all stretches of the imagination, they believe U.S. hegemony good, generally speaking.
Mhm.
They talk about, but they talk about real politic. They talk about cosmopolitics. They have
Mhm.
different authors, but generally speaking, it is a center right
Yeah.
magazine, right? To be able to have this conversation and this debate, I thought the debate was a good debate. I thought it raised some really interesting issues when we're talking about the state of Israel. I think that the conversation of, well, if it's not apartheid, what makes it different, right? If different people have different rights based on in-group, out-group dynamics, then what what are we talking about, right? And can we have that conversation in a way that, like, again, you're saying you have that conversation, you're called an anti-Semite, it shuts it down. You don't have that conversation, you don't have that debate, and you're talking about education. Is there any difference between what's going on in South Orange and what's going on in Florida with respect to the different issues?
Mm. Um, I mean, on its face, I don't think so. If we're talking about teachers on the ground, in the trenches, right, so to speak, trying to get the work done, because what we know that what's happening in Florida, as we always say, it's not just happening in Florida, it's happening in Jersey, right? It's happening in Essex County, it's happening in South Orange, Maplewood, right? Where, in the last, few years, we've had elementary school teachers teaching the colonial American unit, and children are being sold as slaves and mock slave auctions and things of that. So what trauma, right? When we talk about
Come on.
right trauma, are we creating for young Black kids. So one of my colleagues in the history department at Columbia High School last week, one of the AP teachers did a phenomenal lesson on the history of Israel and Palestine. We happen to have there was one Palestinian young woman in the class. And in her experience, right, the lesson was so good. She went home, right? She told her mom about it. The mother, emailed the teacher and thanked him, right, for teaching that lesson. And because again, for a while, for a few days there, her daughter was coming home, increasingly again feeling isolated, hearing the terms, the negative calls, but just that one lesson, right, allowed her, right, to feel seen. So much so that again she went home and shared it. And so I would say, to answer your question, there are a lot of similarities on the ground in terms of the impact of teachers to be able to teach the truth and the impact that it can have on our students in terms of preventing some of the trauma they experience.
Yeah, Chris. Is Chris there?
Yeah, he was there. He was there.
Hello?
I'm getting some
My apologies.
Oh, can you hear me? I'm getting some
I can hear you.
Okay, I was getting some reverberation. Look, we
Okay,
lost.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you now. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So no, I love the way that you were putting the first parts in terms of like the way in which we teach, what we teach, and what we have to do in terms of that, right? Like, do you think that there's special pushback? Do you think that there, when it comes to Black people, and when we have conversations, when we have conversations about Palestinian rights, I think for many Black people it reverberates, and that, like, I was watching PBS, I was watching the NewsHour, and in one of these they were talking about this 15-year-old who was clearly unarmed. They had video, right, of a 15-year-old, and this is PBS, right? This is the NewsHour, so it's not some like right-wing source, right? And kid walked out and was shot. They showed up to the point where the kid went down. They showed the father go out for him. The kid is clearly unarmed, right? So you had an unarmed 15-year-old Palestinian kid go out, shot that appeared to a Black person watching like it was target practice, right? And when you looked at the father who went out to get the kid, he was also shot, right? And I think that when we're looking at what happened on October 7th was horrible. I consider it a crime, right? Like, their rules of war and engagement, whatever you want, clearly these were war crimes that happened to Jewish people in Israel on October 7th. I can acknowledge them as crimes. I think, the United States has no problem seeing that as a crime, right? But I think the specific thing with Black people that kind of like it reverberates with this is that the 15-year-old kid who was used as target practice, and his father that was used as target practice, that wasn't a crime. Like, no crime committed, no level of official outrage from the United States in terms of recognition of that crime. When kids are shot in a school, that's a crime, right? Like, to me, like, you're a criminal, right? Like, there's no rule of war that excuses that. Like even if you're talking, like, you talk about the entire history of Gaza, but if there are rules of warfare or any of that, they ain't following them when they shoot up a classroom full of kids. When you blow up a school full of kids, is that different?
No.
And I think that, like, the inability to talk about that, right? Nicholas Kristof from the New York Times, right? Like, New York Times, not a right-wing publication, not an anti-Israeli publication. Nicholas Kristof is a mainstream human rights writer. He's always writing about human rights. And he's like, we can't kill Palestinian kids to get revenge for Israeli kids, right? Like, kids, we shouldn't be killing them. Is that the pushback that you're getting on that basic human rights level? And do you think that to some extent, right, because Nicholas Kristof isn't getting that pushback. The writers of Foreign Affairs aren't getting that pushback, right? The many people who talk about this who don't look like you and me might not be getting that pushback. Do you think some of the pushback you're getting, the pushback your Black superintendent's getting, is anti-Black and again falls in the James Baldwin category of like if there are accusations of anti-Semitism, it is simply because they are anti-white? Like, do you think that there's a certain anti-Blackness that is working against you when everything you're saying is documented? You're not quoting conspiracy theories. You're not quoting like it's academic work, right? Like you're a teacher, I'm a teacher, I'm a debate coach. We look at evidence. We try to look at sources. We try to have mainstream political sources on the stuff that we use, or at least be able to look at sources and compare them, right? And have that analysis of this is this source, this is this source, right? Like there was an article from The Hill that was like, if you look at the article that the Harvard kids wrote, that where they got threatened and doxxed and widely condemned, that was not unlike an editorial from Hamas, that not Hamas, but from Haaretz rather, right? Not unlike an editorial from Haaretz, which is the New York Times of Israel, right? Like it was not unlike that in terms of their criticism of Netanyahu, their criticism of the Israeli state, because the statement did not seem like they were criticizing the victims, because that's crazy, right? It seemed like, from the language, that they were highly critical of the Israeli state and the decisions that were made. It was a criticism of the state, not individuals, which is fundamentally different, right? And they're making similar attacks, but they're not being treated the same way. To some extent, do you think that on many cases, it is the race of the person who says it that makes it, quote, hateful and in need for silence?
No, I would definitely agree with that. I would definitely agree that there's, this is again all in the context of white supremacy. Earlier in your comments, you kind of referenced the again, and this goes back to our lessons from the Black liberation movement, right? There's the on the ground like reality, right, in Palestine, which may more often than not be more intense. But what we call low intensity warfare that exists in so many of our Black and brown communities in America, and you talked about the police shootings, right? You talked about the control of movement, right? Whether it's stop and frisk, in New York City or Newark or wherever, right? At one time, and then what's existing on the ground in Palestine, and so our ability to make those connections, especially in a place like for example, Maxwell Freedom School, right? And so having educators of color come out, I would definitely agree with you that a lot of the criticism and the pushback that we're getting is definitely rooted in some anti-Blackness.
And part of the reason why I'm talking about it, I just feel that it is a part that is not really talked about. And I think that to some extent whenever a lot of times when use of the term like Zionist, it could be triggering, it could be misunderstood. It could be it could be seen as like, oh, is that a code word for Jew, right? Is it because also one of the things I want to acknowledge is that there is clearly anti-Semitism, and there is anti-Semitism that is rooted in a lot of this. Like I've heard conversations where people talk about the Jews, right? And I'm like, ooh, that's not right, right? Like that's not based on literature. That's not based on research and scholarship. You're quoting conspiracy theories. Those are quite those go away, right? And I think that again, the conversation is full of nuances, but even though, right, there is anti-Semitism that can clearly be granted as seen as many of these conversations, the whole apartheid, the whole ways in which whiteness functions, the ways in which it can be anti-Black, that seems like is something that can be supported and needs to be talked about, right? Like these conversations, whole conversations, need to be had, even if they're difficult. And I think one of the things you're objecting to is the use of bullying and intimidation in terms of like to even not have a conversation, right? Like it now. Do you feel that you and Chris, that you haven't been on? I think you're having technical issues, but do you think that you are being potentially bullied, or other teachers are being bullied, targeted, their jobs are being threatened? Is there anything to suggest that, or is it just a level of like uncomfortability? Has anything risen to the level of, if you keep speaking, you might not have a job, or you might not have support, or there'll be some actual ramifications against you?
We haven't received any communications that threaten employment, right? The most we've received is the request or demands from some folks in the community, right, that they sever ties with us, right? That we no longer be allowed to do the professional development, like with teachers, that we no longer allowed to be to do our work with students. Now the district can't shut us down because we're technically not a district group, like district.
But what they are trying to do is ostracize you from the district and isolate you, label you so that you can be isolated from the district. And those are real, actual, tangible harms, as in like you can't work with or help students with the district in the same way. You can still help them individually, but it's just a little more difficult. There's a lot of anti-racism work that you do within the district that they're saying that you can no longer do. Right. And it's ironic because, again, it seems like when you're dealing with something that your organization deals with anti-blackness within the South Orange School District, which they need, because there's a record of actual anti-black racial discrimination in the South Orange School District. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that the school has been studied. Then when you talk about the disparity of classes, like there's issue after issue after issue, from police being like actually, intimidating students, which is how your organization was started, right? So there's levels of anti-blackness that your organization rose to push back against. And what you're saying is that there are some members of the community that are saying, despite your solid record of dealing with anti-blackness, because they don't like what you are saying about the Israeli-Palestinian situation, that they are trying to label you in a way where you can't do that work against anti-blackness inside the South Orange School District, which again leads me back to that James Baldwin essay, right? Where that James Baldwin essay was trying to look at that, we've all debated for and against intersectionality, and I think that the philosophy in a way just says that people have multiple identities, right? And those multiple identities can come at play in various ways. And in here, it seems like that there's a certain privilege that's being used to be able to push policies that prevent organization like yours from dealing with anti-blackness within specifically the South Orange community. Chris, you're here. What's up, man? I know you have a lot to say on this topic. Part of the reason why we did this show is because you sent me an email and was like, hey, we need to do a show on this. And so what have you found? You are an activist. You are a future doctor, will get your doctorate and be a professor.
The son of that community.
Yes. So what is it that, why did you say that why did you want there to be a show about this? And have you faced intimidations, threats for things? You're very outspoken, right? About the issues that you believe in. Have you felt intimidation in this conversation?
Well, that's a very complex question. I think over the years, most definitely there's been intimidation. Even while I was still in college at Seton Hall, I was asked to give some type of remarks at there was a program for the 1619 commemoration at Seton Hall. And I gave some remarks regarding how the commemoration of that event is the same thing as what is happening in Palestine right now with the Israelis and the U.S.-backed occupation and colonization of Palestinian land. And I was called into the Human Resources Office for anti-Semitism charges.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So what was? So tell me more about that.
Well, I just said that the same way that Christian Zionists sought to conquer this land and still do, is the same way that European, colonists have used religion to conquer lands all across the world, the same way that they are currently doing in Palestine. And if we really look at it, the Zionism that exists in Palestine right now, there are plans to actually conquer certain parts of Africa instead of Palestine in this moment. So after World War II, there are actually plans by European powers and backed by the United States, which became the primary imperialist power at that time, to conquer, different parts of a certain part of the eastern part of Africa in order to have a strategic point between Africa and Western Asia. And so that's what we see, Israel is right now.
But here's the question, right? Now, it's possible to give you pushback on it in terms of what's your evidence, citing other evidence or counter evidence, right? There's a possibility that you can be wrong about some of the things that you're saying, or at least nuance, or at least missing a nuance. Specifically when you're the way in which we're talking about Zionism. The question I have isn't about whether or not there can be pushback. The question is, why did they say the conversation was anti-Semitic?
Well, I think the identification of Semitism with a European interpretation of Abrahamic religions is really at the root of it. Palestinians are Semitic people. Palestinians are Christians, Muslims, and Jewish people, and they're indigenous to the region that they're in. Because the association of the religions of Europe to that land, plus the imperialism of Britain and the United States with the Zionist project, that has given weight to the argument of anti-Semitism when you try to argue against Israel in that context.
So when you're looking at so the pushback that you're given, right, is that it seems like you and TJ Whitaker are using the term Zionist in different ways. Maybe, I don't know, right? But it seems like they're being used differently. Is when you say, if you're anti-Zionist, are you saying that the state of Israel should not have been created? Or are you saying that the level in which Palestinians should have an existence there too, right? In terms of just the way that land was divided by the United Nations back in 1948, creating a state of Palestine, creating a state of Israel. Are you saying that in and of itself should not have happened? Israel should not exist? And is that a different conversation from Palestinians not having human rights? I think that there are different layers to the debate, right?
I don't know if it's a different conversation as more as it adds context to the same conversation.
Well, the reason why I say it's a different conversation is that there are many people who think the state of Israel should exist, that they just think Palestinians should have rights and there should be a two-state solution, right? I think that is a fundamentally different conversation than a settler colonialism conversation, right? Those come from different places. I think that human rights violations are going on right now with Palestinians in terms of the levels of bombs that are being dropped, right? I think that the foreign affairs articles that talk about a one-state solution are accurate in that, not a one-state solution, but a one-state reality, rather, are accurate in that there really is effectively one state there. And that becomes problematic because if it is one state, then it becomes an apartheid state. I think that's a different conversation, a fundamentally different conversation than Israel, the settler colonialist power, and they shouldn't, because the starting point, right? Like, I'm not even pressing back on the argument. I'm just saying they're different arguments, and different people have different layers of pushback on them. I mean, do you see that?
I mean, I think the argument from the masses of Palestinian people is the argument that Israel should not exist, because the entire land that's occupied by Israel is in itself settled colonialism. Like that in itself is the same replication of like the 14th century or 15th century colonization of the Americas or Australia or wherever Europe, landed. I don't think that there's an argument for that. I think that we can argue, say it's an apartheid state, and that's really dealing with like liberal context of what we have now, but it's not really dealing with like the roots of the problem. The root of the problem is that the Palestinians have been fighting for their land back from European colonization for over 48 years, actually. And I think that we're here debating a subject of the fact that Israel is not a legitimate state. I don't think that anyone in the world has. But the thing is, like, no one in the world has brought up the fact that Israel is a legitimate state. No one in the global South has justified that fact other than Western Europe. So this is only in the international community in Western Europe, and only for those lackeys here in the United States who justify that because they have to have run campaigns for their own personal purpose. But
it seems, again, it seems like that argument, right? Like, when you're saying that, like, no one else justifies it, there are many countries that have normal relations with Israel because they recognize it as a state. That's the whole thing that Saudi Arabia was about to do. The reasons why recognize it as a state.
If we're talking about international relations,
Saudi
the United
Arabia,
States imposes the international context for the United Nations. If we talk about the World Trade Organization, if we talk about the International Monetary Fund, that's based in Europe and the United States. So that's based in the colonial world. So we talk about Europe as a creation of that European colonialism. It does not necessarily have a legitimacy among people in the global South, among people in Africa, among people.
So you're telling me that nobody in the global South recognizes Israel, does business with Israel? That China doesn't do business with Israel?
That isn't owned by the United States? No, absolutely not. That is not owned by the United States in terms of military power or like financial power. Absolutely not. That's evidenced by the Security Council's positions. If you watch the last Security Council summit, that's evidenced by that. So there is no state in the global South that really, if they're not owned by the United States directly in terms of military power, that they recognize the legitimacy of Israel.
So again, little pushback, right? Like, when it comes to recognition, I'm just talking about an objective thing, and people who do business with Israel, and to do it, you have to consider it a legitimate state. As in, like, that is why Saudi Arabia was trying to get, and I believe that there were a few other countries in the Abraham Accords who already recognized, and they're to say that the different Arab countries that have recognized Israel are just under U.S.'s foot, maybe not as, maybe oversimplifying, especially based on modern context, right? The United States has significantly less power than it had like 10, 15 years ago in that context. I'm just putting that out there, right? But but all of that, what I'm saying is that like, when you're having the conversation, right, and you're saying, like, do you see why that if you're saying Israel shouldn't exist, that there are a lot of people who, like, if that's the first point, that is there are people who are like, oh, then, like, for example, if Israel shouldn't exist, where should the Jews in Israel go? Where should the citizens of Israel go? I'm asking a question, right? Like, you said they shouldn't exist. This is a question that we have. And I'm just saying, right, like, there are certain implications to that, right? Like, and I'm not even saying that the theory of settler colonialism is not it's a theory. I'm a debate coach. We debate settler colonialism all the time, right? We're going to be debating it next week, right? We're going to be run settler colonialism sometimes. Sometimes we're like, no, it's not good. So we argue both sides of it. So I get where you're coming from. We argue Afro-pessimism sometimes. We argue a lot of critical race theory. So we argue a lot of different theories, right? All I'm asking is that, you know, that the alternative for settler colonialism is give the land back, and we debate back and forth what that means. What does that mean to you?
Well, I think a lot of that means the successes that the resistance in Palestine has had in terms of kicking Israeli settlers out of the occupied territories. The fact that they've taken flights out of the country is very much a success in terms of kicking out settler colonialism. The same way that it was a success in Zimbabwe, formerly Rhodesia, the same way that it was a success in South Africa and Namibia, the same way that it was a success in Angola. I think that anytime that civilians that call them, or settlers that call themselves civilians, are kicked out of a country that they are paramilitarily trained to be occupiers of, that is it's a rebuttal to the entire colonial project that has embodied the United States and its control over the world. I think in terms of the ability to kick those settlers out, Hamas and the supporters of Hamas have been entirely successful. And any organization that is principled here in the United States that wants to support Palestinians should support that. And I'm not unapologetic with that.
Here's a question of that, right? Like, again, the obvious pushback, right? Like,
but what is the
I make arguments. No. I'm just gonna, because when I'm looking at what happened on October 7th, I'm looking at human rights violations. I'm looking at people got murdered. No way I'm justifying that. Like, no way. Same way I can't justify the Israelis dropping bombs on the school and having high rates of kids getting killed, right?
So,
like, collateral damage is not a thing with that. So, like the ways in which you are, like I know that your position is everyone's position on this is very different. I know your position is very different from TJ Whitaker's position. You speak for yourself. I speak for myself. These conversations are important, right? Like, no, I don't think you should be sacked for the conversations or the beliefs that you have. We need to have these conversations and flesh them out, which is what we're doing, which is why I'm asking you these questions, right?
Yeah.
And to that, right? For me, there's no way I would support like Hamas. I don't even know a lot about. I know about the history. I know that they came revised in 1987. I know that that a lot of the Fatah and the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the organizations that came from them, do not mess with them, right? Like, they're not on that same page because they believe fundamentally different things. But I also wouldn't be down with, like, I would not be down with saying that, like, what happened on October 7th was a good thing, because I don't believe in, like, murder of innocent people, even in, like, quote, warfare, right? Like, so I'm not. Do you appreciate the implications of, like I don't think you can, like, I think that there's a big contradictions that are going on within this, and that there are some people who are like, what happened on October 7th was a crime, and yet when they look at Palestinians who were killed, they can't recognize as a crime that was committed. And apparently there are other people who can look at what is happening to Palestinians as a crime and can't really get the human toll of, like, October 7th in terms of innocent people being murdered, and being able to be like nah, like in terms of, like, support, that just seems very different.
I think that
help me understand.
It's very important to, like, contextualize the offensive by Hamas on October 7th. I think that it's very important to contextualize the false reports and the false allegations given by Western press that were not backed up by any type of evidence in terms of Hamas's alleged atrocities towards Israelis.
Well, I mean, it seems that
if we're being truthful, there's been no evidence given to any of those atrocities.
Well, there seemed to be
even
evidence given
Joe
to
Biden
reporters of major
rolled
news.
back on his allegations with that. So there's no actual evidence with that.
I'm just saying that in terms of what I like, again, I'm a debate coach. I only believe in the evidence, and maybe I could be wrong.
So there's no evidence
but
for
I
that.
believe that.
So
I'm pushing back against that, because there are at least reported and multiple
Report
press
is not
outlets
evidence, though, and
that
you know that.
yeah, I mean, you weigh it, right? You don't cut me off, man, because like it's actually important. Like you're saying that what
I was
reporters
watching in the
what
background.
reporters of
Chris set
major
up now. He
what
ready down up there.
you're
He
saying
set
that
up.
a series of reporters
I'm ready.
who have seen the cameras that Hamas apparently had been putting online itself, right? That seem to be coming from the organization. You're saying all of that's a lie. None of that exists, and you're 100% sure, with 100% clarity, that it's all a lie. That's what you're telling me.
I'm saying that there have been enough redacted reports with that to show that there has not been evidence for the atrocities for what Hamas has committed in the Western press, and there has also been enough like Western press that have covered the hostages like taken by Hamas that have rebutted like a lot of the allegations by Western press. So I think a lot of that has to be viewed in terms of like
Again, like the evidence that you're like, I look at evidence, I look at mainstream sources, I look at alternate sources, I try to put stuff together. I like it, what you're saying right now, right? Like in terms of there were no atrocities committed by Hamas. Sounds like, nope, Israel didn't kill, and they didn't drop no bombs on those schools. They didn't drop. There were no large scale
there is no
civilian
equivalency
casualties.
between
Hamas
the
is
atrocities
making the
committed by
stories up.
Israel and the alleged atrocities committed by Hamas. Even if you measure it on that basis, there is no comparison with that.
Okay, so is there a possibility, right, that like what is your like we would really need to get into like here's the
But I feel
evidence
like,
and
again,
basically the
so we're
evidence that I
still
would have.
debating this one topic over like the right of Palestinians to resist by any means necessary.
Right, but it's part of it, right? Like because whenever you're trying to for me, whenever I'm trying to communicate something and trying to be persuasive, if I'm saying stuff that will not get me listened to or make people think that I'm listening, like when I'm talking to different Trump supporters and they're quoting certain things and I'm like, well, what are you talking? Like, what are you there? Like I think you can say, like I make the argument that human rights abuses should not be taking place, that there should be a ceasefire, that the Palestinians have been tortured. I don't really use any of the evidence that you're talking about. I don't back Hamas, but I come to the conclusions that there's high levels of oppression that are going on with Palestinians that shouldn't happen.
Okay, so I have a question. Is like, so if there was the premise of Palestinians using the armed struggle to achieve their liberation, right? What would be the premises of that? Would it be to kick them off the settlements of Israel? Would it be to make a military targets like that Israel has? Would it be to address the civilian militias that Israel has in Palestine? So what are the questions with that? Because we also look at the civilian casualties in Israel, but we also look at the similarity between the Second Amendment and the construction of militias in the United States when it colonized this land, and Israel when it colonizes that land. So civilians are not just civilians in the same sense of the word as is in any other country. They are also paramilitary like figures, and they're also trained as that in order to achieve citizenship in Israel. So when Hamas or the resistance that is not just Hamas strikes at military targets, they're not just striking at innocent civilians. So well, I think those are also questions that we need to examine with that as well.
I think that sounds like a mirror of the IDF when they're talking about Palestinians who are part of Hamas, who are engaging and embedding Hamas.
But Hamas is not striking hospitals. Hamas is not striking hospitals or schools or refugee shelters. So that's not a mirror at all.
And when on October 7th, they struck civilian towns. They struck a music festival.
Settlements that have been invading their land that have walls around them.
I'm just saying
that is not the same.
Okay, so I know that you're making this difference, right? I don't think we're not going to agree on this, but I think that part makes what you're saying less persuasive, right? I think that when I think that I'm always careful of justifying human rights abuses, especially in ways like that. I don't think that I think that there are all sorts of ways look at, like, I think that fundamentally there are a lot of different questions that are coming on here, right? Like TJ Whitaker's point, very different than your point, right? His point was specifically about what's going on in South Orange, and
I know,
like,
but how would you
right,
justify
your
the
point
Haitian
would be,
Revolution with that?
like, I don't have to justify the Haitian Revolution, right? Like, I think it's great, right? Like, the Haitian Revolution was important because they got out slavers. That was awesome, right? So yes, but I think that there's a level of for me, there has to be a level of humanity, right? And I'm very consistent with that. Like, Black person, product civil rights movement, understanding like all sorts of humanity and focusing on that as well. Now, I'm not, so like, if you're saying, right, like that, so I would not back organizations, like I wouldn't back them up. I would be like, oh, I support her. No, right? But if you're looking at,
But
like,
again, I don't
because
think people
that would
here are
have
presented
me.
with like a.
I'm sorry. Yes, Chris.
Jonathan,
sorry,
didn't
I
you
think I'm
ask
cutting you off.
earlier about examples in the news? Where were there examples in the news
Of what do you mean?
about
Examples in the news of?
levels of humanity shown?
I'm not sure. Like,
What?
I
Because
think that what I was saying is that there are lots of, I go through news sources. It seems like there's lots of supporting evidence of innocent people being murdered on October 7th. Never questioned that, and there has been more and more evidence of that, including like these being recordings from multiple news reports that these recordings came from Hamas themselves, right? And that these were recorded and these were shared, and these were shared with various reporters. And so, like, if I have a preponderance of the evidence that showed me one way, I'm not going to push back against it to the point where I'm like, no atrocities took place, which was the pushback. But if we want to change the subject here, right, like we can, right?
no,
But
I was
I
just
think that
asking
it's important to
because
put, I think this
I think we should
distinction
move on
becomes
to like
important
the
because
subject of
I
the
can't get,
inherent right to rebel.
yeah, but Chris, I did want to ask
So,
one earlier in the week, in the beginning of the week when the news came out. If you remember the two elderly women that were released, do you remember that?
I do. I think I'm
Okay,
familiar with.
and she reached back and she like thanked the Hamas soldier and like that, and I was like, wow. And when I went and kind of continued, and that was actually shown on different media, like C-SPAN, not C, I'm sorry, it's like CNN and MSNBC and all of that, but it hasn't, and a lot of people when you go down and read, because Jonathan, you was just asking about humanity, and I was like, wow, it really caught my eye that morning that they were letting the elderly women go. And if you can remember, these were the two women, and then their husband were left behind, and they gave, you know, and the women account of them being held hostage was like, if you can remember, they were saying that they it looks like they planned it for a long time because they had a lot of stuff for us to, like cleanse ourselves and so on and so forth. And they gave us coffee and things like that, but they separated us from our husbands. You don't remember that early in the week?
Yeah, I think
And
that
I was just saying that, and that to me, but it left, I was a question mark in my head, and the way she reached back, almost like and I, and I'm looking at the picture now, but there was a lot of talk of it on the, internet about,
yeah,
what was going on and why that happened like that.
right. Like I read that report as well. It said
That's
that,
what, okay.
although there was a lot of brutality when they were taken, obviously because of the hostage situation, when they were in those tunnels, they were treated with respect. They ate the same food, etc. Right. And then in terms of release, so in terms of establishing like levels of humanity and complexity into a conversation, if now, Chris, all that to say, even with what you're saying, I believe you have a right to say it and express it. And what it is in line with, like, you're saying that when you rebel, you should rebel against your captors, right? If they're your captors, if they're your oppressors, then they should be killed. Hence the example of the everything from the revolution in Haiti, which was brutal, to the American Revolution, which was also brutal, right? Like, which is, I'm sorry?
To the Vietnam War, to Korea, to Angola.
Right, but all I'm saying with that is, I'm not into justifying other people's violence, especially when that violence is, like, in terms of that contemporary way, not something that I would just freely get behind, and especially when it's in contradiction to the violence I abhor, right? Like, I'm just very consistent with, in this situation, like this, that what I've been talking about is the violence that's been plunged against the Palestinian people, right? And the same justification is, to me, the justification of it. Like, we were attacked. We were, since we were attacked, we have a right to do anything to the people who attacked us, right? Or at least seemingly so, given the number of bombs that have dropped, etc. I'm like, no, that doesn't give you a right to do anything. And I'm just consistent across the board with that. Doesn't give you the right to do anything, right? We disagree.
I just feel like the presentation of Hamas and some of these things have been very unnuanced in the Western press, and the way that the overwhelming majority of press here that we get in the United States understand Hamas and the resistance movement in general in Palestine. And I think that we need to question that in general, and also that in terms of, like, the allegations that then get put on them. So I think we need to really just be critical about that.
Okay, but
and
is there a
just in terms of
possibility
being, like,
that
consistent of that,
but is there a possibility that some of the allegations were presented by Hamas and that they recorded themselves? Like, when you say
Well, like,
allegations,
when
like,
the recordings that were put in the Western press are recordings of ISIS that are not from Palestine and speak an entirely different language, and that are put in the Western press as that, then no, I don't know if that's really consistent.
oh, and that's what you're saying is going on, that a lot of those
Oh,
things that have been put.
absolutely. There's been literally, like, different languages, like, presented for terror groups that people here do not have the ability to, like, discern between that.
And
Are
again, like,
presented on CNN or as far up as the white when Joe Biden has to recant a statement that Hamas is beheading babies. I think that's when we should really question the atrocities that they're committing. So, but
right. And what was the last thing you said?
I think that when the atrocities reach the White House and Joe Biden even has to, like, rescind statements of Hamas is beheading babies, and he's personally seen that when that isn't true, then we really had to be critical as to what information we're getting here about what these resistance groups are and what character they have, or what
And that's
extremist
fair, right?
tendencies they have, or these things that unless we're seeing them from Palestinian groups themselves on the ground, then I don't think that we can really understand them fully. Because if
what you're
we're
saying is
getting
that,
them here, then we don't really understand them really.
so
It's
then
hard to
you're
do
not
that.
saying that the evidence doesn't you're not saying that it is impossible to happen, that it happened. Is that you should be very skeptical given the sources
Yes.
that you have. So being skeptical is a different thing. I think we need to be skeptical of all sources, especially when the
Yes,
the
we can agree
rhetoric,
on that. Yeah.
especially when the rhetoric is rhetoric that's used to justify killing mass numbers of Palestinians. A lot of the rhetorical nature of, and
Right.
part of me pressing back against what you were saying is the rhetorical nature, the way rhetoric is being used, right?
Yeah.
The way rhetoric is being used is to justify a lot more murder, right? And certain commentators, I saw them talking about emphasizing the rape of women as a justification for mass bombings and the violence that we're seeing against Palestinians, which, as a Black person, is reminiscent of a white supremacist trope, right?
And also how many
Not
false
saying,
allegations
and
came with
again,
that.
right, but again, I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm saying they used to justify murder, right? Because I don't know, like I'm not saying these things did not happen, right? But I am saying the rhetoric, the way it's
But the
used,
scale and
is to
the
justify a
propaganda,
lot,
yeah.
like 7,000. Well, it's used rhetorically to justify 7,000 bombs dropping on a small territory. in a short amount of time, right? Where you have high levels of civilian casualties that are going up every day. So my focus is very consistently to be like, there needs to be some consistency in the international community. If murdering kids is bad, then murdering kids is bad.
That's
You
right.
have a different approach, right? Like the way you're talking about it is very different than the way I'm talking about it. And it's much more in line with, it just is, right? And it's much more in line with dealing with the theory of settler colonialism and what are responses to settler colonialism, which are also valuable exercises, right? I think the theory of settler colonialism is something that should be taught. I think that we should debate about it. I think that these things are real, right? I think Afro-pessimism is, just like I think that when we are dealing with theories that give you that help put context to oppression, always good. In when we're dealing with real people dying, I think we should all be like just a conscious effort to be humane in our rhetoric when we're talking about people dying contemporary right now. And when I'm always pulled back whenever somebody's life doesn't matter, right? And part of what gets me in this debate is that it seems like Palestinian lives don't matter, right? That there's always a reason to kill. There's a reason to kill innocent people, right? And they call it collateral damage. I think that the way in which collateral damage is used is like homicidal, as in it is so broad as to make us go, yes, we're killing lots of innocent Palestinian children and innocent people have nothing to do with it. But, right, it's one of those things that allows mass murder to happen rhetorically, like the way we use language. I think the use of the word collateral damage is definitely homicidal, potentially genocidal in the ways that allows us to justify mass numbers of killing because we've got to get to the enemy. Look at what they did. I think talking about the rhetoric of that and how the rhetoric of that can justify homicidal things, I think is problematic, right? But I also think that if we're looking at, and this is just me, right? Like if we're looking at the theory of settler colonialism and we're looking at and we're applying that to actual situations that are now, there is a strong potential to justify murder, right? And murder of innocent people, right? Or like it rhetorically is not it's rhetorically not safe. It is rhetorically dangerous, but very much needs to be with a part of the debate that we have. Like these discussions are valuable, and I think and hopefully what I'm trying to model is a way to have these discussions, have an understanding of these discussions, and it is not it is far from hate speech. It is the way in which we have to talk about oppression in order to get anywhere. It's the way we have to talk about these issues. Like even though I disagree with you, I think I know the conversation is a highly valuable one because people do not look at revolution, oppression, like issues of settler colonialism, what it means, how it can apply to this situation, to even understand how the rest of much of the rest of the world thinks about these issues. Because if we don't know how much of the rest of the world thinks about these issues, we're not going to be able to have real democratic conversation about any of this. We're going to make stupid policy like that, as we've had make stupid policy for years in the Middle East, right? Right now, everybody's like, the war in Iraq was a bad idea. They didn't think that 20 years ago, right? Like George Bush, apparently, and many of the people who worked for it didn't know the difference between Sunni and Shia Muslims, right? There was like high levels of ignorance about what and how the rest of the world thought and would think and would know about the policies that we had, which were highly murderous. Like hundreds of thousands of people died because of US policy decisions. So I think the ability to have these conversations without censorship, by having to force scholarship, I think is necessary for every level of discourse and within our hope to be a democratic society. Now, I know that we've gone, we have gone, yes, Donna?
No, I was just saying, and I think in its simplicity that if you're saying killing children and babies is horrible, it's just horrible anywhere it's done. It should be the same conversation wherever, when you see it or when we see it in one place, we shouldn't think of the word I'm trying to say, but the fact that it happens to anybody's babies, to anybody's children is horrible, horrendous across the board. It's not. It's not more. It should not be more accepted in one place than it is in the other. And I think that, and even, and I know it's off base, but even coming as I listened to the conversations in Maine and what happened, and when they were asking, and I know they were trying to pull the people out of Maine that we need to get control of guns and things like that. But the people in Maine, a lot said we have to pray and do better. Not that we have to get rid of those type of guns and things like that. So I think our conversations need to be, I don't know, like what I think I heard you saying is that it needs to be understood across the board and not just, I'm trying to get it out and it's not coming. But, in the simplest, can you make your statement in the simplest fashion so that, just saying across the board that it's horrendous to see. I think I've seen a father holding a 4-month-old baby, and he was asking, well, what did this 4-month do? What did this baby do to you that caused him to get killed in the wars and things? And what answer could you possibly do? Because there is no answer. He did nothing, but was there with his family. But the fact that I think we're becoming, more like it doesn't affect us, and I think at one point in our world that to see young people, particularly young people, maybe women, things like them, be harmed by the effects of war, caused us to come out with different policies and different decisions. But today that doesn't happen. That's it.
Okay. Baba Zaid, you have not talked much, so talk to me. Do you have thoughts on this as well?
I have a lot of noise in the background in the house. I apologize. Look, and several things. One, I mean, what's at stake here is a genocide, right, against the Palestinian people, right? And what is the imbalance is not just the power relationship between Israeli military and a colonized Palestinian people. There's an imbalanced relationship with the influence of Zionist clout and U.S. media dictating to how these discussions go.
And,
right?
and again, the
Saying,
thing I would ask.
Now, listen, hold on. Let me get in here for a minute, right? Okay. Several things that are happening that we need to appreciate, right? We're looking at in real time. In real time, we're looking at something that can translate into a mass ethnic cleansing of over 1 million people.
Right.
In real time. Mm-hmm. Right? And only one side of this conversation in the national media order as we know it is the only voice that is being heard. The fact now, I appreciate that you lifted up PBS, acknowledging and whatnot. And do you know how long it took to get a PBS to acknowledge the plight of Palestinians in this particular arrangement? How long it took. This is a 75-year-old argument. We just got finished acknowledging the anniversary of Nakba when 700,000 people were purged through ethnic cleansing to create the state of Israel. Right? And this is on the same par. What is happening right now is on the same par. That Hamas had the capacity and it really, yeah, I mean, in my own personal space, there's a side of me that's really suspicious as to how Hamas was able, quite frankly, to get that off, because the Israeli military has been given so much to prevent an attack on the scale that took place on October 7th. Was it an intelligence failure of a right-wing government, or was it a setup to justify a broader attack to accelerate Israeli expansionism at the expense of 1 million people in what is now the West Bank and Gaza? There's a lot going on in my head. If you want to ask me what I feel, what I would also want to say is this: I want to appreciate in all of this blood, all of this confusion, and all of this drama, that there is emerging in front of us, also in real time, the emergence of an international Palestinian solidarity movement that is full of young people from across the spectrum, all over the world, right? And they're saying something very different. That's what's being portrayed to us in the media about why there is this broad character of Palestinian solidarity emerging that we have not seen before, right? There is a people's movement emerging to check that old domination or control of the issue that the Zionists have. And look, I'll give you a parallel.
And so the reason, but Zai, before you go any further, well, it's just no. It's a term you used, right? You use the term Zionist again. What do you mean by the term? And again, is that like? And the reason why I'm pushing back is, again, I said, like, to many it may seem like that's a red flag term, that it might be a substitute for
in
Jewish,
a conversation, right? That is being dictated by somebody else. It has been translated into something. And listen,
and just while you took that pause, just say that Chairman Ham came and enjoyed us. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, we say him, all right. Okay. And I want to shout him out, because here's one of the few persons, right? And then I'll give you some big love, right? One of the few persons who is being considered for office, not being bought and paid for by a lobby called AIPAC. It's a Zionist lobby that has controlled the tongue of Black elected officials throughout the country. There are very few who have not taken the poison of AIPAC lobby money, right? The Dean was getting ready to come on at the beginning of a campaign, right? Coming after a now very vulnerable Robert Menendez, who himself is a part of a racist Cuban lobby that has dictated how the Cuban question has been discussed in the United States. Look at those parallels, right? He had Gail Walker, a dear friend of mine, lives 10 minutes away from me, arrested in his office because he is above talking to anybody that disagrees with him. See? So, I mean, solidarity matters. Principle, solidarity matters. And I'm a child of Malcolm X and the Black Panther Party. When I see genocide, I call it out. And I unite with anybody to fight against it, because that's what the historical moment calls for. Fighting for freedom is not a crime.
Go ahead,
Chairman.
Lawrence Ham.
The marks of
Welcome.
This person is not all politics are local, are not subject to the
our general statement comes across. Chairman, I really like that. Wherever you're at, I really like that look. That looks really, really. Wherever you're doing, you should. That shows really well.
Well, I'm just
response.
I'm just sitting in the car. I wasn't gonna come on tonight. I mean, I've been on the road, but I was listening to the show, and I wasn't gonna come on because I just had one accident. I didn't want to have another, trying to be on the show and driving at the same time. But
You had enough goddamn accidents.
That's right. I just pulled into the parking lot behind my house. But the Palestinian question is probably right now the foremost international question, because what's unfolding right now in Gaza may go down in history as one of the greatest examples of war crime, maybe since the end of World War II. I mean, can you imagine being in Gaza right now? There is no power. There's no power. Can anybody remember, like,
none of that?
when
That's right.
you were in
No
a
water.
blackout? There's no power. Without power, you have no running water. There's no internet. There's no fuel to run generators to be an alternative. And on top of all that, more bombs have been dropped on Gaza in 2 weeks than were dropped on Afghanistan by the United States in a single year.
All with U.S. tax dollar money, by the way.
Right.
All of that is subsidized by the United States.
I accept the figure that 1,400. I don't think anybody has disputed the number of Israelis that were killed, 1,400. But right now, we're moving toward 8,000 Palestinians having been killed in 2 weeks.
Including
more than 3,000 children.
Right. When it again, like when I'm looking at
14,000 wounded. I mean, if you count the dead, that's one thing, but 14,000 wounded.
Right. And then that's not even the people who
they were under a total siege before October 7th. Like, I think about, for instance, we have a park in Newark called Nat Turner Park.
Mm-hmm.
What would people have called Nat Turner? Because Nat Turner, when the rebellion went off, they killed 55 white people. They killed women. They killed children. I'm not justifying anything, but you have to understand, I think context is important. Like, I weep for any innocent people that may have been killed. I weep for any innocent Israelis that may have been killed. But why did we not ever see that anguish over the thousands of Palestinians that have been killed almost every year? And when people decry the violence, but when they launched peaceful protests,
they were shot.
They were shot down in cold blood.
28 journalists killed within the year.
That's right.
In Palestinian territory. 28
That's right.
journalists.
That's right. You know, so
Shireen wasn't the only one.
I say that because as a U.S. candidate, as a U.S. Senate candidate, I issued a statement. You would know it because although I sent out over 110 press releases, only 3 news outlets chose to run it. Black Star News,
Mm-hmm.
Insider NJ, and Patch.
And listen, that's a breakthrough for Insider NJ.
Mm.
Right. No one, and I called for a ceasefire. I called for the United States to permit unfettered humanitarian aid. 20 trucks a day is almost ludicrous. Do you know how many trucks were going through Rafah before October 7th? 500 a day. That was before this current humanitarian crisis. They will permit 17 trucks, 20 trucks with some food, some water, but they won't let them have fuel. Do you know right now the healthcare system in Gaza has totally collapsed?
Right.
Now there's a debate over the one hospital, the hospital of John the Baptist that was bombed. Okay, let's leave that in the corner of, just for argument's sake, unresolved as to who did it. But Israel does not deny having bombed 42 other healthcare facilities. They bomb healthcare facilities, they bomb schools, they bomb
apartment
churches,
building,
mosques. They bombed the oldest Christian church in Jerusalem, the Greek Orthodox Church, over 1,300 years old. They bombed that.
That's right. That's right.
You know, so
How do you think about it?
see, one thing we got to be clear on. Wait a minute. Let me finish. One thing we got to be clear on. Hamas aside, and it's really, you know, unrealistic to say Hamas aside, but for argument's sake, Hamas aside, in this scenario, who are the oppressed and who is the oppressor? The state of Israel is the oppressor. The Palestinian people are the oppressed. I saw a clip the other night of President Truman, because you know it is under President Truman that the state of Israel was founded.
That's right, 1948.
I saw Truman say with his own mouth, this is a quote. I don't know if it was it must have been at a press conference, because he had a big map behind him, and on the map there was no Israel. Like if you go get your grandma's Bible right now and you open it, and they show the Holy Land, there's no Israel. Not in your maybe in your Bible that you got in the last 20 years. But in grandma's Bible is Palestine. And behind Truman was a big map of the area. And it showed Palestine. And Truman was trying to explain why he did what he did. You know, he said, you know, we trying to establish a homeland, but he said it's problematical because, and this is what he said, this is not what I'm saying. He said, the Jews, they want all of it right now, and they want it handed to them on a silver platter. And Truman said, you can't do that when you move 5 million people out of the land and move 5 million more people into the land. See, we got to understand history. They knew exactly what they were doing. They knew exactly. He said, Truman said, he said they want it on a silver platter. We can't do it all one time, so we got to do it little bit by little bit. This is what the President of the United States said. And if we forget that paradigm as to who is the oppressor and who is I remember, do you know that it just struck me, and I had to go and actually look up some stuff. You remember when I was a little boy, I saw the movie Moses. Did any of y'all see Moses with Charlton Heston?
Oh God, I do remember that.
As Moses.
I do remember that.
Not Ten Commandments. You're saying Moses, right?
And that's when we had like segregated movie theaters. I saw Moses at the National Theater on Belmont Avenue in Newark, New Jersey. There's a building there, an apartment building where the National Theater used to be. And that movie had a profound effect on me. Like, I think that was like one of my first deep religious experience. I was only like maybe 4 or 5 when I saw the movie. But have I lost y'all? Are y'all there? I'm only seeing myself here.
I know he's spotlighting you. That's all right.
Spotlighting
I won't be spotlighting. I won't be in the group.
Okay.
So, I saw Moses, right? And you know, that Moses, the parting of the Red Sea, the 7 plagues, when the frogs rained out of the sky and the locusts rained out of the sky, and when Moses went up on the mountain and the finger of God came out of the air and wrote with the finger the 10 commandments on the tablets, and I was like, oh my God. Now, I had never thought about this before. Israel was founded in 1948. The movie Moses came out 8 years later. But it wasn't just Moses. It was Moses. It was Solomon and Bathsheba. It was David and Goliath. It was so many religious movies. And it just came to me. Maybe it came to y'all before. Maybe y'all already figured this out. I'm like a pretty simple guy, so it takes time for me to figure some things out. But all these religious movies came in the aftermath of the founding of the state of Israel. All these Old Testament movies. Yes, they did do King of Kings. That's New Testament. But there was a lot of old Samson with Victor Mature. All these Old Testament stories to reinforce in people's minds this idea of the chosen people. And that somehow they had an inherent right to this land.
Chairman Ham.
One
thing that in these conversations, I always try to avoid stuff I can't prove, because it's like, yeah, they were moving in the 50s. That was afterwards, but it kind of takes away. Like, first, it sets up like, oh, it's a conspiracy theory. I don't debate conspiracy theories because can't prove them, and all it does is leave you to be like, oh, what is he saying, right? Like, I think that always the way to actually talk about these issues is these issues, right? Like I don't care what movie was released. I do care about like bombs going off and us not caring about it.
Here's the problem with that. How do we understand the world?
Right.
We understand the world through the ideas that shaped our consciousness and culture and movies and drama and music. All of these things don't exist artist gratis artists, art for art's sake. They exist within the context of a particular social system. And most of the time, for the most part, but not exclusively, they end up reinforcing that particular social system. So maybe I'm wrong about these movies, but I can't help but see this coincidence that, and we know from CIA, now it's not conspiracy, we know from CIA documentation that there were strong relationships between the FBI and Hollywood, and the CIA and Hollywood, and that those relationships continue today. We know for a fact that they planted CIA agents in newspapers. There was a strong relationship between the War Department and Hollywood. We know this as fact. This is not conjecture. So I'm saying also that the culture is used to justify colonialism,
right.
used to justify imperialism. You know, many Black people can't even wrap their head around the Israel-Palestine conflict because they were raised in churches that taught them every month that the Jews were the chosen people of God, and Israel is the land that was given to them. And this is why Black churches, for years, they can't do it now because there's too much war there. But for years, Black churches would give these trips to the Holy Land to reinforce all these religious ideas. That's why there's this strong relationship between the white Christian nationalists and the Zionists. There's a very strong political, the same people that we're talking about in Congress now. This guy, the one that they just elected speaker, you know, who said it was God's will for him to be speaker. This white racist Christian nationalist said it was God's will for him to be the speaker. You know, they are staunch. The white evangelical Christians in this country are staunch supporters of Israel. And they are staunch supporters of Israel because of particular motivating ideas. And that's the idea of the end of the world and how the world will end. And that Israel has to be established in order for Christ to return. And I mean, I'm not going to go into all of that, but all of this is documented. And I know people don't want to talk about it because it's very painful. And some of it does sound conspiratorial. But right now, Palestinians are being bombed out of existence. When this thing is finished, there are going to be few examples in modern history that match the brutality. I heard a particular, I think his name is Gabor Mate. And Gabor Mate, you've heard him on Amy Goodman's show. I think he's a psychologist.
Yes.
Gabor Mate said, whatever wrong Hamas has done, now this is a Jew talking, whatever wrong Hamas has done, Israel has done 1,000 times worse. And we want to play into this like moral equivalency. I mean,
exactly.
Did we not support the armed struggle in South Africa? Did we not support ANC Umkhonto we Sizwe? Did we not support MPLA in Mozambique? Did we not support PAIGC in Guinea-Bissau? Did we not support MPLA in Angola?
That's right.
I mean, we've shown that How many times have we shown that film, The Battle of Algiers?
That's right.
About the Algerian people's struggle against French colonialism. You know,
Larry,
the Palestinian people have a right to self-determination, but they also have a right to self-defense. All human beings have a right to self-defense.
Larry, isn't there a difference and nuance in that Hamas and Fatah, very different, don't get along?
Yes.
Fatah was the national movement, right?
Yes.
And so when you're dealing with Hamas, that was partially like an offshoot that was helped with by like the intelligence services, like that was aided actually by intelligence services.
Yes.
In its inception, arrived in 1987 as a challenge to Fatah. Like, isn't it complex in terms of like they are like the liberation movement?
Right. No, there's no disagreement with that.
Chairman, just a second.
In
Chris,
every revolutionary movement, there are different sections, different contending. Like if you look at Angola, there was MPLA, there was UNITA, and there was FNLA. Yes, they all had different perceptions and different political orientations and different relationships with other countries. Yes, these things exist, you know.
Chairman,
and exist there, but somehow you know, it just hurts me to my heart. It hurts me to my heart to see that we will like spend all night talking about who bombed the hospital, Hamas or Israel, when 8,000 people are being killed in front of us.
Right.
You know, why are we not talking about how do we get a ceasefire?
Right.
Or why do we continue to give $3 billion? They talk about Israel has a right to defend itself. It should be able to defend itself. We give them $3.8 billion a year. We've been giving them $3.8 billion every year for the last 25 years. They are the 11th strongest military on the face of the earth. And they have nuclear weapons. This is the same Israel that supported South Africa.
That's right.
I mean, how can we forget that? In fact, the South Africans helped give nuclear technology to the Israelis in return for their support. Israel is estimated to have 200 nuclear warheads. It's not an equivalency. I mean, for whatever Hamas did, Hamas is a resistance group. The Palestinians have no conventional army. What do people do when they're faced with a superior military force? What did Nat Turner do? You know, these children are, I mean, 3,000 children have died in 2 weeks because of the carpet bombing. This is a violation of the Geneva Convention. Collective punishment is a violation of Geneva Convention and international law. Forcible transference of populations is a violation of international law. No one is saying anything about it.
One of
especially the United Nations.
The Secretary General of the United Nations gave a speech, and he was pretty even-handed. He condemned Hamas for killing innocent civilians, but he said, quote, the Palestinians have been killed and brutalized for the last 56 years. Do you know that the U.S. and Israel are trying to get him removed? They're trying to get Gutierrez removed as the Secretary General because he wants to tell the truth.
Chris, I know you had made a statement and we didn't get to hear you. Do you still want to say it, Chris, before DJ Rhino comes?
I'm just saying, even if the question of, where funding came from at the initial point, where contradictions sharpen, that's where national liberation movement is defined. Hamas's national liberation movement is defined in the rootedness that it has in the communities that it has in Gaza. And I think people really need to study more on the complexity of Hamas and the fact that Hamas is not going to be removed from Gaza, no matter how much Israel tries to bomb it. And also the fact that in any national liberation movement, like in Korea, like in Vietnam, like in Russia, like in Haiti, like in Cuba, no matter how much people try to terrorize the people, no matter how much imperialists try to terrorize the people and civilians, people will stay strong and resist no matter what. And I think that the people have the right to resist inherently by any means necessary. And when it comes to defining what our national liberation movements look like here for anti-imperialist or anti-colonial movements for colonized people here, and talking about the BLA, talking about the Young Lords, talking about Asian Americans here, we should really be talking about that as well in terms of connecting our solidarity to the pro-Palestinian movement. So.
It's a connection that's long been established. But here's the but. Coming back to my original point, the but is because of, and then Jonathan, I'm coming back to your original question, right? There is a Zionist lobby, right? And that lobby has been designed to constrain so-called civil rights expression in the United States around this issue. And that's an old design. It's not new. It's an old design. Black solidarity has come from the Black radical left and the Black nationalist community that does not take philanthropic monies from lobbies that do that. Right? And as a matter of, and they can say as a matter of principle, right, that the Palestinians have the right to self-determination. Right? If you get money from Zionists for donors, you got to walk the line of the conditionality of your donations.
Hmm.
And that's why you see all these, that's why you see what you see when you see these Black folks, just right along, going along with the line because they have been drinking that Kool-Aid.
I want to commend Bonnie Watson Coleman.
That's right.
Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman. There are about 18 or 19 Congress people, 18, that put forward a resolution in Congress calling for ceasefire. There was only one representative from New Jersey's 12 congresspeople who had the courage to stand up, because when you stand up, they go after you. AIPAC goes after you. ADL goes after you. They removed that sister, Cynthia McKinney, and they went and got another Black person to do it.
They did. Yes, they did.
Because they couldn't run a white person because they would lose. They went and got another Black person to run against Cynthia McKinney, and they took her out. I believe they helped to take out Charles Barron, because Barron wouldn't toe the line like Hakeem Jeffries.
That's right. And Barron is strong and backing him up also on the real estate front in terms of how that plays out in the economic control of our community.
So Bonnie Watson Coleman is putting herself at risk. And I just want to commend her, because I didn't know she was strong. That she had that kind of
surprise. Yes, it was.
Because if you take that stand, they're gonna come after you. She stood on that resolution with the squad, with Ilhan Omar, with Rashida Tlaib, with Ayanna Pressley, and with AOC and others on calling for a ceasefire. Just a ceasefire. There's nothing really revolutionary about a ceasefire. But at least stop the bombing.
Right.
Stop the bombing. Like you said, Israel has a right to defend itself. Well, have they defended themselves enough? They lost 1,300. The Palestinians have lost 8,000, 3,000 children in 2 weeks, 14,000 wounded, 5,000. What about those hostages? What about the 5,000 that have been arrested and detained by Israel for no other crime than being Palestinian?
Right. And the way that people don't look at the structural violence of arrest, like arrest for no reason, like that's not kidnapping.
Right.
That is.
Or the way people don't look at state terrorism.
Right.
Everybody will talk about the terrorism of a group that should be talked about. Like if I lost one of my loved ones in World Trade Center, I'd be mad as an MF.
Mm-hmm.
If one of my children or one of my family was blown up with a IUD that Hamas put down in the road, you know where I'd be like, oh hell no. But nobody talks about the state terror. I mean, how could you drop more bombs in 2 weeks than was dropped in a whole year on one city? We're not even talking about a territory. We're talking about one city. Gaza is roughly the size of Philadelphia, with about 2 million people.
And telling them to move or die.
You talk about you don't want terrorists. Can you imagine the trauma and how that's going to affect those children that survived the bombing, who watched their mothers die, their fathers die in front of them? Can you imagine how they're going to be impacted? They're gonna reap the whirlwind. They're gonna see something worse than Hamas. And then they're gonna ask why is this happening? It's happening because 10 years ago We turned our back on the Palestinian people. I'm talking about the United States government. We said to hell with the two-state solution. They stopped negotiating. Trump came in violation of all previous accords and moved the embassy to Jerusalem. Right. Then he sent his son down there to make a deal with Prince Bonesaw, who killed, you want to talk about terror, who killed that, what was that brother's name? The journalist. Huh? What was his name? The journalist, the one that
Jonathan, did you say his name?
Up. The one Jonathan, they saw in pieces.
Yeah. Jamil Khashoggi.
Khashoggi. They made a deal, and they was going to essentially deal out the Palestinian question. That's what the Abrahamic Accords was all about. It's about making a peace between Saudi Arabia and Israel, and to hell with the Palestinian people.
The Palestinian, that's right.
To hell with the Palestinian people. You know, we turned our backs on them, and this is what we got. You know, we want freedom in some kind of cookie cutter, nice parliamentary Robert's Rules of Order kind of process. It don't work like that in the real world. People fight back with whatever they get, and if you prevent them from achieving change peacefully, you make it possible for those that want to use other than peaceful means.
And I know we have gone over. I know that DJ Rhino is up, but what you're saying, and it's borne out, has gotten progressively. The reaction progressively over time has become more intense, more like you went from a secular movement to a non-secular movement. You went from the different levels of violence. At every stage, violence doesn't stop violence. Violence just makes it worse. Violence makes what comes after worse. And so, you know, when people are talking about a ceasefire and a demand for a ceasefire, they just don't want they know that violence spreads. And this level of violence that's aimed at Palestinians, that everybody in the world is watching, this level of Muslim lives don't matter, that everybody sees, I think many people are looking at what are the ramifications going to be over the long run for the rest of the world, for the United States, who is taking a stand that is giving Israel a green light and saying all collateral damage seems to be justifiable. But DJ Rhino, I know we got 3 minutes left.
And you can have 5 of them. Go ahead, DJ Rhino.
I know.
And there's solidarity in hip hop too, by the way, on this question. Right. I'll come back to that. Go ahead, Rhino. Go ahead.
Oh, you want me to ask the question?
Oh, whatever. No, did you have it? What did you want to say for hip hop?
Everybody's
highlight. Anybody this week? You know.
Well, definitely. I wanted to just shine some light on what I meant to shine light on last time that we were short for time. Is 45 King. We lost a legend in hip hop. Mark 45 King, Mark James, aka Mark the 45 King. Of course, he was known for, like what you see on my shirt, the 45 adapter right here. He was known for playing, the 45.
Yes.
The 45s. And he did all the sampling off of 45s, all of his DJ sets off of 45s, right. Tapes. You know what I'm saying? He started in the Bronx. He was actually the record boy for the legendary, the pioneer DJ duo, DJ Breakout and Baron. He was the record boy. He was the one that was passed him the record. So that's where he got his knowledge from with his as far as his music. So so he started in the Bronx, man. I think he spent some time in Jersey City, spent some time in like Newark, East Orange area. You know what I'm saying? But he was basically the backbone for what we know as the Flavor Unit. We know Queen Latifah coming out of the Flavor Unit, her and Shakim. But I want to shout out also the ruler Lord Ramsey, Latim, Lakim Shabazz, Chirab G, Apache, rest in peace. My brother C Just, Lord Ali Baski, Double J, rest in peace. and again Shakim and Queen Latifah, and then that's the original flavor unit right there, and then there's a few others, but then from there they created flavor unit management, and they went on to manage people like Black Sheep and Outkast and others. But Mark 45 was the backbone. He was the godfather of that whole movement. You know what I'm saying? Big ups to my man Cool Mellow Max. My man Max, Cool Mellow Max was part of my crew, but when me and Max hooked up, he was just coming from Mark's crib. Every time I would link up with Max, he would be coming from Mark's crib because he was doing recordings with Ramsey and Mark. So so that's where I started learning about Mark, and Mark 45 was one of those producers where DJ Red Alert, who was on Kiss FM at the time, DJ Red Alert was playing all of Mark 45's beats as promos, like in between the records that he would play, or in between the when they about to go into a commercial or come back from a commercial, they would always play Mark 45 King's beats. You know what I'm saying? And that's where Mark started getting heard, and then he started putting he's putting out the vocals to those beats. When we heard La T, This Cuts Got Flavor, or La Kim Shabazz with Pure Righteousness, and even Latifah with Wrath of My Madness. So it was Mark 45 King that was behind all of that, man. And and we lost that brother last week, man. It's a huge loss to Jersey hip hop. It's a huge loss to hip hop in general. You know what I'm saying? And big ups to everybody down with the flavor unit.
Rhino, who did we lose last week? I'm sorry. Who did we lose?
You talking about who I'm talking about right now?
Yes, who? Yes.
Talking about
Mark 45. You saying we lost him last week? Okay.
We lost him last week. Yeah, Mark 45 King.
Okay.
Mark James. And like I said, he was the backbone to the flavor unit. What we know is the flavor unit. From Latifah, Latifah brought on Naughty by Nature, and they became part of that family as well. You know what I'm saying? So it's a huge loss to hip hop, man. You know what I'm saying? It's a personal loss to a lot of our hip hop heads out here in Jersey and Bricks, and rest in peace to Mark 45 King. Condolences to his family, and that's just what I wanted to say. He's the man behind the famous beat called the 900 number. Boom.
Yeah.
DJ Cool, DJ Cool and Biz Markie, rest in peace, and W Fresh. They did a song called Let Me Clear My Throat.
Clear my throat.
Let me clear my throat.
Yeah, and so that became a huge hit, a big hit in the clubs and stadiums and all of that. You know what I mean? And that was Mark 45 King. Mark 45 King was also responsible for Eminem's huge hit Stan. He did the beat for Stan, where Eminem is talking about a fanatic, what we call a fan, but he calls him a Stan. His name is Stan, and he's writing a letter to Eminem, and Eminem writes back, and it becomes crazy. He was also behind the what they call the ghetto anthem, Hard Knock Life, Volume 2.
It's a hard knock life.
Jay-Z.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So he was the one that put together the kids from the Annie song. You know what I mean?
That was fire. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that that was Mark 45 King. He did stuff like that. He did a lot of music, a lot of things for a lot of music for things that we don't know about, as far as commercials and TV shows or whatever, just background stuff on radio. You know what I'm saying? Mark was there. Mark was the man behind that. And set it off by Big Daddy Kane. That beat, it's credited as Marley Mark because they ended up modifying it for Big Daddy Kane, but those drums and stuff originally came from Mark 45 King. The remix to Salt and Pepper's My Mic Sounds Nice. He did that. Nice. You know what I'm saying? So Mark 45 King, he did the remix to Microphone Fiend for Rakim and Eric B.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying? So Mark 45 King he's a legend in the game. He's been doing it for many years. Like I said, he started in the pioneer days as a record boy for Breakout and Baron. And we're gonna miss the brother, man, because he was very approachable. I met him personally way back in the day at a record store in the village with my man Cool Mellow Max. And the last time I saw him was not too long ago. Just
which record store in the village?
Say it again.
Which record store in the village?
Oh, I don't even remember, man. It's one that's not even there.
It's a legendary record store.
Yeah, it was years ago. But
And Rhino, as you
the last time I saw Mark was just a few years ago at Mobile Mondays, where he was in his element, rocking the 45s. Man, he was rocking these joints. And Mark is a master at his craft because he really gets you engaged in what he's playing. Because he'll throw on some show tunes or something, and then throw on some crazy break beats and all kinds of stuff. Man, he makes it entertaining. You know
DJ Rhino, explain what that ancient Hindu symbol is on your shirt.
Yeah, this is the 45 adapter. You know what I'm saying? This different. Let me see if I got my other one.
That's how you put it in.
I got a red one here somewhere, but yeah, so it's a 45 adapter. It's what you put right here in the middle of the 45, so that you can play it on the turntable. This is also a 45 adapter as well. We use these.
Oh, that's new.
And then we have we got flat ones and stuff like this, but this was the main.
That's the one.
Yeah,
go put up a pack of those at the record store. Rhino, as you close out talking about Mark, can you just tell us how we also just lost? Nobody would know him as his name, but if you say Shaft, you know exactly who you're talking about.
We lost Shaft, man, the bad mother. Shut your mouth.
Watch it, you doing how that just
Richard Roundtree, man. Richard Roundtree. We lost Shaft, man, and you know. He was definitely a staple in hip hop too, because that soundtrack alone that Isaac Hayes put together was sampled like crazy, man. We sampled a lot of stuff from that. I think there was a song called "Do Your Thing."
That's right. I had that on a 45.
Yeah.
Oh,
we sampled that like crazy. I know I did. I sampled that early back in the day. Yeah, that was.
You tied them two together,
that's
you know that.
Man. And you know, it's funny also, you know, talking about the hip hop connection to it. When Big Daddy Kane came out, he reminded me of Richard Roundtree and Shaft.
Yes.
Big Daddy Kane kind of had that same swag and same flow, you know, the way he moved and whatnot, even the way he looked, you know what I'm saying? And so so he reminded me of Shaft when Kane was, you know, they always reminded me of
the bad Watcho.
The bad
Richard was able to work, and as an actor, Richard he was able to work right up until the end. It was like he stayed much healthy for all of his life and worked right up until the end. He's been on television and film just recently.
Yeah,
he worked right on up until the end, and he had a great career and had range.
Yeah,
because, you know,
and
he
how
was Shaft, young and in his prime, but he had range. He covered the gamut, all kind of grandfathers and all kind. You know, played folks who was, you know, dementia. He played all kinds of stuff.
And even as they continued on with the Shaft with Samuel Jackson, and then with the grandson, they always still brought him back. And I think that's going to be one of the most successful things about Shaft is how they kept him. And as a part of the, you know, wherever they went, they always put Richard Roundtree in there, and they just brought him back. And then the last one was
2000 with
it was the young kid, then the father with Samuel Jackson, and then Shaft would be the grandfather. That was the brilliance of that writer who continued to do that, and all of them are really good. And you know, you can watch them from the first one to, you know, to the most recent one. So
and me and my man G was talking about that too. We were talking about how, you know, Shaft was like one of our first black superheroes, man. You know what I'm saying, on film. You know, he was, you know, when it came down to those kind of movies, man, he was like our first black superhero, man, to kind of flip the script.
First person shows how to wear a leather trench, huh?
You know what I'm saying? That leather trench, man. That leather trench was something.
Rhino, do you know Jasiri X from Pittsburgh?
Say it again.
Do you know Jasiri X?
Yeah. Jasiri X. Yeah.
Now I'm turning the conversation back to where we were, because I know at some point we got to end the damn show too.
Mm-hmm.
At some point.
Not at some point. Y'all can keep talking, but we're gonna end this. Get in this real soon.
There is hip hop solidarity with the Palestinian question. All right.
Okay.
Jasiri X has got a strong piece that he did a few years ago called Checkpoint. It is so on time to what we're talking about right now.
Checkpoint.
Jasiri X is always on point, man. When I first heard of him was when Trayvon passed, and he did something on Trayvon, you know, on the whole thing with Trayvon. Yeah.
Jasiri X is trying to do in Pittsburgh what we are doing in Norfolk around community-based violence intervention. I'm very proud of that little brother. Very proud of that little brother.
It is time.
And to end the show, I'll say this.
Okay.
Right? To make peace, you need to have an open line of communication between the two contending parties. There has to be a willing to put down arms, a ceasefire that you hear everybody talking about, right? That's what that's about. Right? And to engage, there has to be acknowledgement of harm on each side. That's the mathematics of starting a peace process.
And what you're talking about is consistent with the peace process that you are a part of, as in like de-escalating violence and de-escalating community violence and stopping community violence. This is where you're looking at peace. And so, yeah, like that's why I think that these conversations are important. And I appreciate everybody out here for having this conversation. I think that when TJ Whitaker started out, he was like, people trying to stop me from having this conversation in South Orange. They're trying to stop me from doing work that is that is dealing with anti-Blackness in South Orange. And I do think that the push to stop these conversations, especially in communities of color, and talking about Black and Latinos and not having this conversation or trying to censor or shut down these conversations, I think it hurts everybody. I think it needs to stop. I think when people start saying you can't speak, Black person, or you should not have a conversation about
this. The only thing you better say.
Right. Or this is the only thing or the opinion that you can have. I think that is dangerous. I think that is bad. I think it is short. I think it is counterproductive. I think it is bad for American foreign policy. I think one of the reasons why America has been so bad inside the Middle East over the last many years is that there's not been a robust conversation about what our policies are, what they mean on all levels of it, right? So, yeah, I appreciate
about Ukraine on that point. You're right on point.
Right. Like, so I think that these conversations have to be had. I think it's inevitable that offense will be taken, right, because the nature of the conversations, but we cannot shut conversations down. We cannot shut people down. I think the threats and intimidation for people who are having these conversations is bad. It's wrong. It's anti-intellectual. And if the guys is to try to stop spreading of hate. Like, I think that the people who are trying to stop these conversations are actually I think they got to check the anti-Blackness that is inherent in the voices they're trying to silence and what they're trying to do about it. So I think this was a really good conversation to be had, and we will have this conversation again and as the others. So I want to thank our guests for the disciples for coming in. Thank TJ Whitaker. Thank Chris Duran. Thank Larry Ham for coming on. Future Senator Larry Ham, who's running for the U.S. Senate. Thank you all for coming on, and until next week.
All right. You don't stop.